Hello, everyone. Welcome to a spooky adventure like no other. Today, I'm going to share with you a story about a dusty old diary that changes everything I thought I knew. Imagine climbing into your attic and finding an old book that whispers secrets from the past. Sounds thrilling? Well, get ready because what I found was more than a diary. It was a portal to darkness. As I read through the pages, strange things began to happen around me. Things that sent shivers down my spine. I could feel the presence of the past and the eerie events unfolding in real time. Every sentence I read seemed to pull me deeper into an unsettling journey. One where I was not just a reader, but a player in a game of fate. I want to hear from all of you. Where are you listening to this story from? Tell me in the comments. Your thoughts and reactions mean the world to me, so don't hold back. If you enjoy this creepy tale, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the rest of this chilling story and the surprises that await. Now, dim the lights and settle in. Let's step into the world of the forgotten diary and the mysteries that lie within. The shadows are waiting. But before we begin, I have something special for you. If you love enchanting sleep stories, you want to hear about LipoSlend, the natural at-home liposuction method that helps you lose weight while you sleep. Imagine waking up feeling lighter and more refreshed, thanks to this special formula made with natural ingredients. Order now and get 2 free bonuses and free shipping on every order. Ready to transform your nights and your body? Click the link in the description below to claim your discounted LipoSlend and start your journey to a healthier you today. I climbed into the attic, my heart beating loud in my chest. The old wooden steps creaked beneath my feet as I pushed open the door. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts, and I could barely see anything at first. My flashlight flickered, revealing cobwebs and forgotten boxes. It smelled like old paper and something kind of musty. In a corner, I noticed a tattered cardboard box, half hidden under a moth-eaten blanket. I pulled it out, curiosity bubbling inside me. Inside the box were old photo albums, some toys that looked like they hadn't been played with in ages. And there it was, a dusty diary. The cover was cracked, almost like it had been through a storm. I opened it, flipping carefully through the yellowed pages. And there it was, written in a neat hand. Today was the day everything changed. My stomach did a flip. I felt as if I had opened a door I shouldn't have. The words described strange noises in the middle of the night. Shadows moving when no one was there, and dark figures that watched from the corners of the room. My eyes widened with every line I read. I heard whispers in the walls. One entry said, "They call to me and tell me to join them." I shivered. Those words felt too real. Then, as if the universe was playing a cruel joke, I heard a creak coming from behind me. My heart raced. I turned quickly, my flashlight darting around the attic. Nothing was there. Just me and the dust. I shook my head, trying to brush off my fear. It's just the old house settling, I told myself, but deep down, I knew it felt different, unusual. Night fell, and I found myself unable to put the diary down. I read about events that mirrored my life in bizarre ways. I lost my favorite toy under the bed, one entry said. As I glanced at my own toy train parked under the bed, my skin crawled. No way. Could it be? Every time I read a new entry, the strange occurrences grew. A cold breeze brushed past me even though there were no open windows. Shadows danced around the corners of my vision. I could almost hear voices gently calling my name, echoing softly. "Come play. Come join us." I closed the diary, my hands shaking, but I couldn't ignore its pull. It was like a magnet, drawing me to read more. Each page felt like it was alive, pushing me further into its dark tales. My body tingled with dread, but I was so curious that I couldn't stop. Slowly, I began to feel like I was not alone. The whispers grew louder. Join us," the words echoed, wrapping around me. I thought I saw a shadow flicker in the back of the attic, but when I turned, there was nothing. My heart raced as a chilling reality began to dawn on me. This diary was changing me somehow. Every word I read seemed to pull me deeper into a world I didn't want to enter. The next entry described an old toy that supposedly could grant wishes, but at a terrible cost. It said, Be careful what you wish for. The darkness will take something dear to you. I swallowed hard, glancing nervously at my mirror. What would happen next? I was both scared and excited, feeling like I had only just begun to scratch the surface of the chaos that was unfolding. The diary had an ugly power, and I was afraid of what it wanted from me. I wanted to close it forever, but my hands wouldn't obey. I could almost hear the pages whispering, begging me to read more. The darkness was creeping in closer, and I knew I had to uncover its secrets before it was too late. I knew I needed to uncover this diary's secrets before they consumed me completely. The air felt thick around me, almost electric. I could hear the whispers again, more insistent now, slithering into my ears like smoke. Come closer, they hissed, and I felt an icy chill wrap around my spine. I opened the diary again, my fingers trembling. The next entry was dated only a week before the last one. It told of a boy who lived in this very house. A boy who had fallen into the trap of wishes. The words described how he'd wished for endless toys and games. At first, it seemed like a dream come true, but soon the toys came to life, each one twisted and dark. I could almost picture them. Smiling dolls with razor-sharp teeth, stuffed animals with glowing eyes. My mind raced as I imagined their laughter, the kind that made your skin crawl. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered my thoughts. It came from downstairs. My heart hammered in my chest like a wild drum. Gathering my courage, I left the attic and crept down the staircase, each step creaking beneath me. The darkness wrapped around me like a blanket, heavy and suffocating. I reached the bottom and paused, listening hard. A cold breeze swept through the hallway, making the hair on my arms stand up. I tiptoed towards the source of the noise. Every flicker of my flashlight seemed to dance with the shadows on the walls. As I entered the living room, my heart dropped. The shelves were in disarray, books and toys strewn all over the floor as if an unseen force had been playing. I should have felt afraid, but instead curiosity pulled me deeper. I scanned the room, looking for the source of the disturbance. Then I spotted something odd. A shadow darted past the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. Just the dark, endless corners of my house. The whispers returned, sharper this time. Find us, we are waiting. I felt a wave of cold wash over me, a warning that something terrible lurked close. Instinctively, I turned back toward the attic, the diary feeling like a heavy anchor in my hands. I climbed the stairs again, the wood creaking ominously under my weight. When I reached the attic door, I hesitated. Should I really go back? As if the house had a will of its own, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. I felt like a storm was rolling in, dark and heavy. I flipped through the pages with trembling hands, searching for clues. The next entry caught my attention. The handwriting was frantic. It said something about leaving offerings to keep the darkness at bay, to prevent the toys from becoming alive. Offers of food, treasures, anything shiny. My stomach churned as I read aloud. The darkness wants gifts. It craves joy to fuel its rage. Suddenly, I heard a soft giggle behind me, childlike, sweet, and haunting. I spun around, my flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. But once again, there was nothing there. My heart raced, and I stepped back, nearly tripping over a forgotten trunk. It thudded loudly, echoing through the silence. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice shaky as it bounced off the walls. There was no answer, only the oppressive silence wrapped around me again, as if the house was holding its breath. I dared to move deeper into the attic, each step heavier than the last. The giggle returned, now followed by a soft humming. It was a lullaby, sweet but eerily off-key. I felt nauseous, a tight knot forming in my stomach. I turned, thinking I'd find the source, but I was alone, except for the diary. It lay open in front of me, pages flipping as if a wind had swept through. Yet, the windows were closed. An entry seemed to jump out at me, racing ahead of the others. They play with you, then they take something. My heart sank. I didn't want to play. I wanted to leave, but the whispers curled around my thoughts, urging me to stay. to read more. "You must know," they coaxed gently. "You can't escape your fate." With each second, the air grew colder, and I could see my breath as tendrils of fog. I closed my eyes, trying to push back the whirlwind of fear wrapping around me. But then I opened them again, and the writing on the pages had transformed. It was smudged and twisted, shapes emerging from the ink, like the dark figures from the earlier entries. I stumbled back, my mind racing as I fought against panic. "I must be dreaming," I whispered, but a part of me knew the truth. No dream could feel this real. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, stretching, reaching toward me like fingers grasping for something lost. I could see faces in those shadows, twisted and sorrowful, frozen in time. "Help us," they seemed to cry silently. I took a step back, but the floorboard creaked under my weight. The frozen faces morphed into grinning masks, mouths wide, as they sang together in unsettling harmony. "Come play with us," they chorused. I staggered back, panic rising as the eerie laughter filled the room. The shadows pulsed with life, swirling around me like a storm. I felt the diary slipping from my fingers, and I clutched it desperately. The humming escalated to a deafening crescendo, drowning out my thoughts. I could feel the pressure closing in, wrapping around my throat. "No, I won't be part of this," I shouted, my voice barely breaking through the chilling melody. But deep down, I knew I had to find a way to turn this around, or I might vanish like those lost souls. The whisper seemed to momentarily quiet, and in that fragile silence, I remembered the warning about offerings. My eyes darted around the attic, searching for anything to quell the shadow's hunger. I spotted an old toy train, dusty but still bright red. It had been mine when I was younger, a cherished possession. Maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. I reached for the train, but before I could grab it, the shadows flickered. "That's not yours anymore," they shrieked in unison, and an icy tendril wrapped around my wrist, preventing me from moving. I gasped, struggling against the grip, but feeling weak, like I was sinking into quicksand. "You can't take it," I yelled. The shadows swirled more violently now, the faces morphing into grotesque masks of rage. I was overwhelmed, feeling as if I was trapped in a nightmare, each heartbeat echoing in my ears, thud, 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 as if the diary and I were one. In a burst of desperation, I remembered the words in the diary. "The darkness feeds on fear." I took a deep breath and summoned every ounce of courage. "I choose to be brave," I shouted into the chilling air, letting the words pour from my lips. I could feel a change, the grip loosening ever so slightly. With every ounce of strength, I pulled the train closer to my chest, focusing on it as a symbol of my childhood, my joy. The shadows hesitated, shifting back, and the whispers grew softer, almost thoughtful. "What if he doesn't play?" one shadow mused. I pressed my eyes closed, urging myself to remember all the happy memories tied to that toy, the laughter and lightness it once brought. "This is mine," I declared, feeling the warmth of defiance bubbling within me. "You can't take my memories." I felt the grip begin to fade, the shadows retreating like waves drawing back from shore. They seemed confused by the light that sparked in my chest, the belief that the darkness held no power over me. Encouraged, I spoke louder. "I will not be afraid. You will not win." In that moment, the shadows writhed violently, and the air grew thick with anger. They howled, a cacophony of rage and despair. "You will regret this," they wailed as I held the train tightly. "You are forever ours." A chill ran through me, but I stood my ground. The diary began to shake in my hands, pages flipping wildly as if it were echoing the anger of the shadows. I could see lines of text blurring as the presence within it fought against my resolve. But then something extraordinary happened. As I focused on the warmth of my cherished memories, a light erupted from the train, encasing me in a soft, golden glow. Suddenly, the shadows screamed, their forms shimmering like broken glass, flickering in and out of existence. "No, not the light," they cried as their forms began to dissipate, scattering into the corners of the attic like wisps of smoke. Overwhelmed but empowered, I took a step forward, the light growing brighter, pushing against the dark tide. "You can't have my joy," I shouted, feeling the last remnants of my fear melt away. The diary then fell from my hands, landing open on the floor. It began to absorb the light around me, drawing on the warmth of my memories and laughter. The shadows screeched one last time before vanishing completely, leaving behind an eerie silence. I stood alone in the attic, the warm glow wrapping around me like a protective blanket. I could hardly believe what had just happened. My breath steadied as I looked around in awe. The attic seemed brighter, the corners less foreboding. I grabbed the diary, feeling an unexpected sense of calm. The words were still there, but they had changed. The frantic scribbles now read like a warning to others, seeking to show that the darkness does not win when confronted with true light. Maybe it was over. Maybe the darkness was finally gone. But just as I began to feel relief, the floor beneath me shifted, and a crack echoed through the attic. I looked down, startled. The floorboards began to pulse, and I could hear whispers rising anew, louder and more insistent. "This isn't finished. You can't escape." My heart raced again, and the realization hit me hard. Perhaps the darkness had not been completely defeated. It lingered, just beneath the surface, waiting for another chance to strike. Gripping the diary tightly, I backed away slowly, sensing the unease creeping back in. As I turned to leave the attic, I felt a cold draft ghost over me, swirling like a whisper begging me to stay, to delve deeper into the darkness of the diary's legacy. I hesitated, torn between the lure of uncovering the remaining secrets and the instinct to flee, to leave this haunted place forever. And behind me, from the depths of the shadows, I could hear them again. "This is just the beginning," they murmured like a haunting lullaby. I took a step back, my resolve trembling. The story was not over, and I knew I had to decide. Would I risk it all to reveal the truth? Or would I have to live with the haunting echoes of what could have been? The diary pulsed in my hands, and I felt its weight. The discussion was not just with the shadows. It felt like a call, an invitation to explore the darkness deeper. They wanted me to confront them again and again until I could not resist. I could not stay here forever. I had to know more. Slowly, I placed one foot in front of the other, the glow of my memories flickering but not fading entirely. With my heartbeat echoing in my ears, I stepped back into the abyss. What awaited me next? I was ready to find out. The shadows felt closer than before, their whispers swirling around me like a thick fog. My heart raced as I stood at the edge of the attic, all senses heightened. I could feel the coldness creeping up my spine, a reminder of the danger that loomed just beyond the threshold. A sudden flicker caught my attention. The light I had felt moments ago began to dim, like a candle fighting against an unspeakable darkness. The whispers turned into laughter, chilling and taunting. "Come play with us. You know you want to," they sang, a cacophony of twisted joy and malice. The air thickened, wrapping around me, making each breath feel heavy. I tried to take a step back, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Panic surged through me, and I willed myself to move. Remembering the warmth of my memories, I focused on that light, trying to fight the encroaching shadows. But as I stood there, the reality of what I had stumbled into hit me harder. This wasn't just a playful haunting. It was a battle for my very soul. Suddenly, the diary erupted in chaos, pages turning rapidly as if a storm raged within. Words danced across the pages, shifting and morphing into a chaotic script that made no sense. A chill shot through me as I watched the ink swirl and writhe, forming images of children with hollow eyes and grinning mouths, toys gone grotesque, dancing around a flickering flame of hope that was me. "Offer yourself," they whispered now, their voices a blend of coaxing and demanding. "Join us forever." I felt something tugging at me, playful yet sinister, as if the shadows ached for my surrender. I could see outlines of hands reaching out from the corners and the walls, beckoning me. I shook my head, trying to dispel the images, but they were persistent, replicating my own fears, my own doubts. With a burst of resolve, I tore my gaze away from the dancing shadows and focused on the diary. What if I could use it? What if there was a way to turn it against them? I flipped through the pages frantically, searching for something, anything that could help me combat this growing darkness. The entries became more erratic, resembling a desperate plea as I came across words scrawled in fear. Once they touch you, you are theirs. Their games never end, it warned. This realization drained the color from my face. A scrape echoed in the attic, pulling my attention back to the room filled with shadows creeping closer. They were forming shapes, grotesque relatives of the toys I had known, slowly twisting and merging into something human, something terrifying. Eyes began to reflect back at me, hollow and wide, searching, yearning. My stomach twisted as icy fear gripped me again, forcing me to stagger backward. Then it happened. A fanged doll with cracked porcelain grinned at me, its mouth stretching impossibly wide as it stepped from the shadows. Playtime started. It whispered, the sing-song tone contrasting sharply with its brutal appearance. I felt a scream clawing at my throat as I stumbled over the trunk, falling hard to the floor. The impact jostled me, but more importantly, it freed me from their thrall, if just for a moment. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding as I darted toward the attic door, breathless and desperate. The shadows flared in anger, bolts of darkness stretching outwards, blocking my path. I rushed to the other side of the room, desperately searching for something. A way out, a weapon, anything to fend them off. The diary lay open, pages fluttering like the wings of trapped moths, and the laughter behind me crescendoed, mixing in with my frantic heartbeat. Running won't help, they taunted, their laughter echoing in the corners of my mind. You'll play whether you like it or not. The room felt smaller as the shadows pressed in, weaving themselves tighter, suffocating me with dread. In a moment of clarity, I grabbed the diary, holding it up as if it were a shield. "No!" I yelled. "You can't have me. I won't play your game." As if my words summoned a storm, the shadows surged forward. The diary vibrated violently in my hands, light spilling from its pages like a river breaking through dam walls. "Feed us," they hissed, their desperation pulsing like a heartbeat in the air. The luminous glow from the diary pushed back the darkness, creating a small sphere of light around me. It made the twisted faces shrink back, their expressions shifting from hunger to confusion. I could feel the power of my laughter, memory, and hope surging around me, filling the room with warmth. Still, I could hear their cries, a mingled sound of cotton and wood, echoing against the walls. But just as I thought they were retreating, I felt the air grow heavier, denser. The walls shook, rattling as if the house itself was alive and furious. Vents creaked, and dust rained down as something deep below the foundation stirred awake. I felt a vibration under my feet, thrumming like a heartbeat of its own. The looming shadows caught my reflection through the cracks in the floor, my pale face staring back, fear etched into my features. "Listen to us?" The voices pleaded, morphing into a chilling blend of laughter and cries, filling my ears, clouding my thoughts. I stumbled back, clutching the diary as though it held all the answers. An urgent whisper ricocheted through the air. Sacrifices must be made. The shadows swirled, clawing at the light, desperate and relentless. I needed to find a way to stop this cycle before it swallowed me whole. I scanned the room for answers, the diary's light casting long shadows against the walls. My eyes landed on a small wooden box tucked away in the far corner, almost swallowed by dark fabric. A feeling of dread settled within me, but curiosity pulled me closer. I shoved aside old papers and remnants of broken toys, my fingers trembling as I reached for the box. It was small, ornately carved with intricate details, its surface smooth and almost warm to the touch. I hesitated before unlocking it, my fear warring against my thirst for knowledge. What if this was a key to banishing the shadows? What if it held something that could help me? With a deep breath, I opened it. Inside, There lay a shard of glass, shiny and sharp, catching the light from the diary. A note lay beneath it, the words scrawled hastily, barely legible. Use the light to contain the darkness, but never let the darkness touch you. My heart sank. It felt like a warning, but it also seemed like an invitation. As I picked up the shard, I felt an unnerving coldness creep into my veins. The shadows howled louder, sensing my shift in focus. "No, don't use that. It will only create more suffering," they screeched, their voices turning frantic. "You will regret it." The diary pulsed again, as if fighting against the darkness closing in, but I held the shard tightly, feeling its power surging through me. I understood now. This was my choice. I could fight back or become their pawn forever. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I planted my feet firmly on the ground. With newfound determination, I faced the swirling shadow forms, the flickering darkness spinning like a tornado around me. "You won't take me," I shouted. The shard glimmered in reflection of the diary's light as it began to radiate warmth. The shadows screeched in rage, their forms losing coherence, drifting into a formless mass, while the point of light expanded around me. I had to act quickly. Drawing upon every ounce of courage, I thrust the shard forward, aiming straight into the heart of the storming shadows. The moment it penetrated the darkness, a shockwave of light erupted, illuminating the attic in a blinding flash. Screaming intensified, echoing like 1,000 voices merging into one. "I am not afraid of you," I declared, feeling power swell within, coursing through the shard, into the diary, and out into the room. The shadows twisted violently, dissolving as the light pierced through, revealing glimpses of their history. Lost souls, trapped in an endless loop of fear and darkness. But even as I pushed back, I sensed a shifting, a growing force from the depths of the house as unseen energy shifted. The shadows began to reform, an angry amalgamation that lashed out against the light. They were not defeated yet. "You may have the light, but it will never protect you," they howled, and a bone-chilling wind surged through the attic, sweeping over me like a flood. The atmosphere crackled with tension as I fought against the growing pressure. "You're wrong," I shouted, my voice strong, battling the fear that threatened to overwhelm me again. "I control this. I can end this cycle." The shadows wavered, pulsing with a dark energy as they maneuvered around me, desperate to snatch the light away. But I refused to back down. My grip on the shard tightened as I focused on the warmth it radiated, letting it fill me with hope and strength. By the light of my memories, I declared, "I will break you." As I spoke those words, the shard blazed brighter, intensifying the glow. The whispers dimmed to a hush, and for a moment, only silence greeted me as the dark tendrils froze, caught in the dazzling brilliance radiating from the shard. Then I lunged, striking forward with the shard, feeling adrenaline surge. The golden light exploded outward, ripping through the shadows, unraveling their dark form until all that remained were fragments, flickering like dying embers. Yet, deep within that fading mass, the shadows hissed, their shapes transforming, the grinning faces reaching for me even as they faded away. "Your story is not over," they shrieked, their voices distorting in an unholy symphony. "We will be back." My breath caught in my throat as they shrunk into wisps, swirling deeper into the cracks of the old house. I stood there, trembling violently, clutching the glowing shard and the diary, feeling a sliver of victory. But an unsettling dread lingered in my gut. The battle was far from over. The darkness had retreated, but I could feel it waiting, restless, biding its time. I knew in my heart that as long as the diary existed, so too would the threat of shadows returning, seeking revenge. With the last echoes tethered in my mind, I dared to hope that perhaps there was a way to fully free myself from the darkness. But what price must I pay to be truly free? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the journey ahead. The silence in the attic buzzed with untold stories and lingering dread. The light pulsed in rhythm with my heart, illuminating my resolve as I prepared to uncover the truth behind the diary that had trapped so many others. Where would this path lead me? I could not know yet, but I sensed that the shadows would return if I didn't find a way to break their curse for good. One thing was certain. I would confront whatever darkness lay ahead. Determined, I stepped forward, vowing to uncover deep-seated secrets, not just to save myself, but to release those lost souls still trapped in their powerful grip. As I descended deeper into the attic, I knew I would discover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. And this time, I wouldn't run. I would stand and face whatever waited in the shadows. As I descended deeper into the attic, the air grew denser, charged with a lingering sense of dread. Each step echoed in the silence, breaking the tense atmosphere like a whisper threatening to wake something that had lain dormant. The light from the shard flickered erratically, casting long, writhing shadows against the worn walls. I felt a chill creep along my skin, prickling like tiny needles. The darkness seemed alive, pulsating around me, as if it drew strength from my fear. I scanned the corners of the attic, feeling eyes watching my every move. From within the cracks and crevices, shadows slithered like snakes, retreating and then darting back, almost teasing me. "What do you want?" I found myself whispering, despite the trembling fear coursing through me. The silence answered, but it felt thick, pressing down like a weight. Then I noticed something shimmering on the floor, a small, ornate mirror partially buried beneath a layer of dust. I crouched down, wiping off the grime to reveal its polished surface. I hesitated a moment, sensing an unsettling aura about it. Slowly, I lifted it, and my reflection flickered in and out of view, the edges distorting like a warped reality. It was as if the very essence of the room lurked within the glass, twisting into forms just beyond comprehension. As I peered deeper, the shadows danced in the mirror's reflection, moving independently of me, whispering secrets that sent shivers up my spine. "Look closer," they said, their voices layered with mockery and hunger. I felt an unexplainable urge to lean in, to surrender to the allure of their call. But I couldn't. I wasn't ready to give in. Clutching the glowing shard tightly, I stood back, breathing hard. "What are you hiding?" I challenged the darkness, my voice barely a whisper, almost swallowed by the thick air. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind me. I spun around, heart racing, the warmth of the light flickering as shadows flicked away into the dim corners. I could feel the panic surging within me, threatening to overwhelm my senses. The loose floorboards creaked underfoot, as if the house itself was shifting, groaning in anguish. A small object rolled toward me, glinting and catching the briefest illumination of the shard. It was a toy, a tiny soldier, frozen in a pose of frozen laughter. Its painted eyes seemed to follow me, mocking with their serene gaze. I gulped. The absurdity of it clashed with the haunting atmosphere. "Why now?" I breathed, shaking my head. The soldier lay still. Its small presence felt ominous. The attic felt like a forgotten graveyard for memories, and every object was a remnant of the past, tainted with shadow. The tiny soldier felt sinister, like a symbol of innocence corrupted, forever trapped in a world it never belonged to. As I turned away, a whisper curled around me, more forceful, filled with malice. "You shouldn't play with what you don't understand," it hissed, as the little soldier's laughter echoed in the empty space. A chill ran through my bones as I took a step back, barely able to keep my composure. I reached for the diary, hoping to ground myself. But as I flipped through the pages, the words shifted, no longer decipherable. Scribbles morphed into drawings, figures resembling children, trapped in cages, their expressions contorted in fear and despair. Their eyes hollow and pleading seemed to look out at me, begging for release. A shudder ran through me, and I quickly closed the diary, feeling the weight of its sinister knowledge press down. "No," I whispered, my breath hitching. "I won't succumb to this." The air turned colder, a biting chill wrapping around me, sharper than before. I bolted toward the attic door, glancing over my shoulder at the mirror. Its surface rippled as if mocking me, reflecting distorted images of my own fear. The shadows, emboldened, began to coalesce around me, forming wraith-like figures, their features merging into one across the room. They reached out, fingers stretching, clawing toward the light emanating from the shard. "You cannot escape," they cried, a chorus of anguish filling the air. "Your memories belong to us." An icy hand gripped my heart as I turned and dashed towards the door. The darkness surged forward, wrapping around my limbs, pulling me back as if trying to suffocate me in its embrace. I fought against it, driven by instinct. "Get away!" In the frenzy, the diary slipped from my grasp, tumbling open onto the floor, pages flapping in a chaotic display. The words flared, glowing in defiance of the shadows. "Light will always expose darkness," they declared, forming a declaration of hope amidst the frantic whispers. Desperation ignited something in me. I could not give up. I had to find a way to break free. I focused on the warmth of the shard, letting it pulse through me, and drew on the memories of joy, the laughter of childhood, the innocence that tied me to the light. With a sudden thought, I turned back to the mirror. "I won't let you take what's mine," I shouted, raising the shard high, the light flaring brighter in response, illuminating the room with glimmering gold. I thrust it toward the mirror as if to shatter the illusion before me. In a blinding flash, the mirror cracked, spreading shards like starlight around me. The dark figures recoiled, shrieking as the light cascaded over them, illuminating their twisted forms. "No, you have to play." Their voices rose in a chaotic din, filled with rage and terror at my defiance. I felt the heat of their anger, their connection to the twisted memories of the attic, as they lashed out. I braced myself, heart pounding, as the shards of the mirror reflected the desperate faces of the children from the diary, their open mouths screaming for escape, for a release from the grip of despair. But the power of the light surged higher, and I screamed back, "You will not take me," harnessing every ounce of courage and defiance. I pointed the shard directly at the swirling shadows. The air crackled with energy as the shadows coalesced, their grotesque forms snapping and reforming. Brief images flickered through my mind, faces I didn't recognize, sorrowful eyes filled with pain. The darkness swelled and surged in retreat, but I pressed on, determined. The warmth radiated, expanding outward until the walls began to vibrate with the sheer force of my will. "You're not real," I shouted, fighting back against the encroaching sensations clawing at my psyche. But it wasn't just the darkness I faced. I felt something shift deep within the foundation of the house, stirring like a restless spirit. There was a deep longing, a sadness that seemed to thrum beneath my feet, a cry for help intertwined with the shadows, a plea from the very walls themselves. The realization struck me. It wasn't merely the darkness that wanted to ensnare me. It was something deeper, something trapped within this house, something that had been feeding off the sorrow and fear of everyone who had inhabited it. As the ground trembled, I wondered what history lay buried beneath the floorboards, what tragedies lingered in the walls. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I had to confront this, not just for me, but for the lost souls, for the fading memories imprisoned in this attic. With energy bubbling up from within, I took a step forward, allowing the shard to illuminate the depths of the darkness. "I will not let you hurt anyone else," I cried, a surge of emotion coursing through me. The light pulsed, brighter now, and I focused, channeling it into the corner of the attic where the shadows writhed like a living, breathing entity. And then, for a brief moment, silence fell. The shadows halted, staring at me with eyes filled with rage and desperation. My breath quickened, realizing I could almost feel their pain, the echoes of trapped souls intertwined with the darkness. "I will free you," I said softly, feeling empathy flutter in my chest. The air crackled around me, and I drew deeply from the warmth of the shard, allowing the light to flow through me, enveloping the room in a brilliant haze. "Release them," I declared, thrusting the shard toward the shadows, my heart thundering in my chest as I urged them towards transformation rather than chaos. As the light spread, the figures began to flicker. Hope sparked, igniting within me, and I could almost hear the faint echo of laughter boiling beneath their sorrow. I could feel the remnants of their humanity, trapped but yearning for release. The shadows shimmered, shifting, as the room erupted with a blinding brightness that seemed to consume even the very walls. "This is not the end, just a change," a voice echoed, one that resonated deep within the core of the house, as if it were finally breaking free. Determining that this was my moment to act, I summoned the intense light and thrust it outward, sure of my conviction as it spiraled into the heart of the shadows. The cabin around me began to warp and twist, the air swirling like a whirlwind, revealing glimpses of time long forgotten. Memories flooded in, children laughing, families playing, but then darkness curled around them, drowning out their joy until only shadows remained. And now, as I confronted this darkness, I could sense their presence, their fears and regrets nesting within the foundational cracks. With every ounce of will, I could feel the essence of courage igniting within me, merging with the shard in my grasp. "You will know light again," I shouted, pouring every fragment of hope into my voice, igniting a fierce light that sliced through the remnants of despair. In a final burst, the light expanded outward, absorbing the dark energies, forcing them to retreat. I watched as shadows were torn asunder, leaving in its wake brilliant sparkles of light like stars in the night sky, filtering through the darkness. But from deep within the edges of that mass, I sensed a ferocious resistance. Something heavier pushed against my light, growing stronger. A deep voice rumbled through the room, insistent and powerful. "You cannot sever our bond." Tendrils of darkness lashed out, gripping my arms with icy pinpricks of despair. It felt like the weight of 1,000 broken dreams, sadness suffocating me like a heavy blanket. I gasped, feeling the warmth of the shard dim as the darkness clawed at my resolve. "Remember," it echoed, "you are not worthy of this joy." For an instant, doubt clutched at my heart. But then I thought of those who had come before me. The laughter turned to silence. I was not just fighting for myself. I had a chance to liberate the sorrow entangled within the shadows. "I will fight for them," I screamed against the pressure. "I will release their pain." The light swelled once more, a fierce flame in the storm, drawing energy from my core, a fierce roar igniting within myself. With a great cry, I surged forward, thrusting the shard deep into the heart of the shadows, shattering the very binds that held their grief captive. The darkness howled as it splintered, furious and anguished, unraveling in chaos. Seeing the resistance crack, anticipation filled me. "You cannot hold power over memories forever," I shouted defiantly, feeling the tide shift as despair transformed into resolve. The very walls echoed my determination, the fabric of the house shifting in response, loosening the grip of those weighty shadows. And as the final threads of darkness began to dissolve, I felt a spark of something profound burst within my chest, fueling me. With that spark, I witnessed flickers of joy take form, children's laughter dancing through the air. They clapped and cheered, faces brightening as the darkness unraveled around them like smoke in the wind. "Stay with us," their voices rang out, floating on the newfound light, while I stood before the mosaic of memories crashing down like the last remnants of a long-lost dream. Then, with a thunderous crash, the darkness fell away entirely, leaving a radiant glow illuminating the room. I breathed deeply, heart racing like a drum. But just as I felt that wave of triumph wash over me, a chilling whisper echoed from the bottom of the attic darkness. "This is only a moment. We will rise again." I froze, the hairs on my arms standing straight. The darkness had not gone quietly. It had retreated, and somewhere deep within the house, I sensed it plotting while I held my breath. Suddenly, beneath my feet, the floor sighed and groaned, the ancient wood shivering as if the house was alive with an unsettling energy. Instinctively, I shuffled back, my heart racing as I felt the air shift again, a low rumble emanating from below the floorboards, pulsing like a gathering storm ready to unleash its fury. Feeling the lingering dread wash over me, the abyss of darkness that had momentarily receded began to seep through the cracks once more. As I felt the darkness seep through the cracks once more, dread coiled in my gut like a serpent lying in wait. The air was thickening, heavy with the weight of resentment and anguish, as if the house itself was breathing, inhaling the remnants of those long lost within its grasp. Shadows crawled along the floor, creeping ever closer, their cool tendrils licking against my ankles like an insistent tide. I clutched the shard tightly, the light still illuminating my surroundings, but I could feel its strength wane as fear threatened to swallow me whole. The whispers started again, a soft murmur at first, rising and falling like a cruel chant that echoed throughout the attic. "Join us! Join us!" The voices called, each syllable laced with a sorrow that seemed to resonate from the very walls of the house. The shadows rippled toward me, dark limbs stretching and curling under the dim light, forming grotesque shapes that twisted and turned in a sickening display. I could almost see the faces of those trapped within, contorted in pain and despair, their mouths frozen in silent screams. It was a bleak reminder of the torment they'd endured, and I felt a rush of despair echo within my own heart as I stared into the abyss from which they emerged. "No!" I shouted, the word tearing from my throat as I stepped back, feeling the wooden boards creak and shudder beneath me. My resolve ignited a sense of purpose. "You will not have me." The power of the shard flickered, flaring slightly at my declaration, and I lifted it higher, casting its glow into the dark recesses. The shadows recoiled at the burst of light, momentarily retreating, but the rumble beneath the floorboards intensified. I could feel the vibrations pulsing with ferocity, like a heartbeat quickening in terror. I remembered the stories I'd heard, the legends of this house, tales of vengeance and sorrow that whispered through time. There was something deeper at play, a history that intertwined with my own loneliness. Suddenly, I noticed a door in the far corner of the attic I hadn't seen before. It was small, weathered, and unassuming, almost like it was hidden in plain sight, and I felt a magnetic pull toward it. Something about the door seemed fresh with promise, but tinged with malevolence, inviting yet threatening. As my feet moved instinctively toward it, the darkness seemed to thrum with agitation. The whispers grew more frantic, sharper, their tone shifting from yearning to rage. "Don't go there! Stay with us!" they screamed, a cacophony of despair that threatened to drown out my thoughts, breaking like waves against the shoreline of my sanity. I reached for the doorknob, hand trembling as I felt the familiar chill radiate from it. I hesitated, heart pounding wildly in my chest, the pulse echoing in my ears as I sensed the shadows coiling tighter around me. With a deep breath, I grasped the knob and turned it slowly, the creak echoing like a mournful sigh through the quiet space. The door swung open, revealing a dark stairwell that descended into total blackness. My instincts screamed for me to run, to escape whatever lurked down there, but my curiosity held me captive. What secrets lay beneath? I took a tentative step forward, the shard casting a wavering beam into the suffocating void. The shadows around me writhed, reluctant to let me go, mourning the moment I stepped over the threshold. The further I descended, the colder it became. Mortar crumbled underfoot, whispering stories of decay and loss. Each step felt weighted, as if the very essence of those who had come before clung to me, begging for recognition. I let the light guide me through, illuminating fragments of the past, a faded picture hanging on the wall, ancient furniture draped in mildew-stained sheets, remnants of a life that once thrived. As I reached the bottom, I sensed an overwhelming presence. The air thickened with a palpable darkness. In the center of the room stood an old wooden table, its surface scarred and warped, surrounded by chairs that faced one another in an uncanny circle. It felt wrong, like an unsettling conference of shadows waiting for an audience. I stepped closer, heart racing, the shadows pooling around the edges of the room, flickering in and out of existence, almost like they were alive. Then I saw it, a thin, trembling sheet of paper resting on the table. Drawing closer, I could see the words scrawled across it, frantic and erratic. The cycle must end, escape, or be lost forever. The urgency of the message struck me, as did the implications. I wasn't just fighting against the darkness. I was part of a twisted story that went beyond my own existence. The very essence of the house pulled at my edges, blurring the line between my consciousness and its malevolent history. I glanced around the room, and it hit me. I could feel them watching. I felt eyes on my back, a burning sensation creeping up my spine. "What do you want from me?" I asked aloud, my voice barely above a whisper, reverberating in the empty space. Suddenly, the air shifted, and a gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the light from the shard for a heartbeat, plunging me into darkness. A wave of panic surged within me. I couldn't lose the light now. I fumbled for the shard, and just as my fingers grazed the cool surface, a low, mournful wail echoed throughout the room. It was a deep, hollow sound that clawed at the fabric of my being. And then they appeared, silhouettes manifesting from the darkness. I could see their faces dimly illuminated by the ghostly glow from the shard now clutched tightly in my hand. The air thickened with dread as they edged closer. Each one carried an aura of torment, shapes that flickered between the living and the dead, a glimmer of their former selves wrapped in layers of despair and anguish. "Help us." Their voices rose in a haunting chorus, a desperate plea that vibrated through the small room, tugging at my heart. "You must understand." I backed away, the shadows surrounding me, the cold breath of lost souls brushing against my skin like a ghostly caress. "What happened to you?" I stammered, overwhelmed by the weight of their sorrow as I glanced at each face, seeing reflections of long-forgotten fears and tragedies etched in their expressions. "We are bound to this place," one of them whispered, a woman with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce straight through to my soul. "Our lives were extinguished in darkness. We are but fragments of memories fighting to break free. I can help you," I found myself saying, though doubt gnawed at my resolve. "But you have to show me how." With that statement, the room shifted again. I felt the chilling shadows tighten their grip, urging me to stay as swirling whispers embraced me. "You cannot unravel what has been woven long before you." They spat with venomous undertones, darting closer, gauging my fear. The shard began to pulsate in my hands, responding to the tension around me. It was growing brighter, but the shadows closed in, creating a storm of darkness. "No, it's time for the past to end," I yelled, thrusting the shard into the air as a blinding light erupted forth, pushing against the encroaching shadows. The figures gasped, their shimmering forms recoiling as the light splashed against the walls like a cleansing wave. "You cannot hold the past forever," I shouted with newfound determination, each word ringing true. But as the light surged, so too did the darkness fight back, this immense power coiling around me, threatening to snuff out the radiant glow I wielded. "You are not strong enough," the air hissed as the shadows reformed, taking on a more solid shape, gathering their strength as if preparing for a final battle. I could feel the struggle within myself, my heart pounding against my ribs as if it wanted to escape. The whispers around me shifted again, now filled with rage, and I realized this wasn't just a battle for my soul. It was a battle for theirs too, a fight for redemption echoing through the ages. Together, the woman's voice floated back to me, a soft ember in the overwhelming storm. "Let our powers blend, strength and unity." Her words struck a chord deep within. With a nod of resolve, I focused intently on the light of the shard, letting it glow with the warmth of my memories of joy, laughter, and love. It began to swell, and I envisioned the darkness coiling and twisting around it, a serpent caught in the light. As I concentrated, I felt a connection threading between us, merging the light of the shard with the energy of lost souls, creating an ethereal glow that soared upward. This formation kicked up a storm of energy that swirled chaotically throughout the room, illuminating flickering images from the past and flashes. Joyful laughter erupted in the air. The sound of children playing, families gathered, moments of pure bliss captured in brief glimpses, overlaid with the shadows of suffering and loss. And then I heard them again. The children, the lost, all calling out to me, their voices weaving into a chorus begging to be freed. Feel us, release us. Their pleas echoed like ringing bells, haunting yet hopeful, urging me to push forward. With a final thrust, I pressed my will against the growing tension, driving the light beyond my limitations, dousing the darkness encroaching around me. I saw the figures start to dissolve, their anguished forms fluttering toward the radiance, faces filled with gratitude. "Thank you," they cried, voices melding with an overwhelming rush of warmth and release. As the shadows thrashed around, I braced myself for the confrontation, and I felt the profound weight of generations pressing on my shoulders. "We are done with you," I bellowed, anger erupting from my core as I stood my ground, wielding the shard like a shield through the chaos. The darkness howled, the wails of the shadows morphing into something more dangerous, marking the desperate struggle of souls clashing against the pierce of light. A final surge exploded through the room, a wave of energy that splintered the very foundation as the dark figures clawed at the edges, pulling away from the luminous embrace. But just as it felt like victory was within reach, one shadow lingered, a twisting, coiling mass that loomed like a predator in the dim light. From deep within, a pair of luminous red eyes emerged. "You think you can banish me?" it hissed, its voice a growl, echoing from the depths of the house itself. The air chilled, a palpable malevolence unraveling around the shadows, revealing the monstrous core that lurked just beyond. I felt the atmosphere shift, a force much darker than before surging toward me. I had awakened something ancient and sinister, something that fed on despair and gnawed on the remnants of those lost. "Fight it!" the ghostly woman pleaded as the last of the light began to dim, struggling against the relentless tide of darkness rising before me. My resolve flickered, but instinct pushed me forward. "Together," I whispered, reaching out toward the light once more, calling forth every memory of warmth that had ever touched my heart. I lifted the shard, calling forth the energy of every lost soul standing with me, joining as one against the malevolent force that threatened us all. In a radiant flash, the shard erupted into brilliance, its light a beacon that pierced through the shadowy depths. "You will not take them again," I screamed, my voice echoing through the darkened chamber, pulling every thread of strength woven throughout generations into a singular moment of defiance. The darkness shrieked, an unearthly sound that shattered like glass, throwing shadows against the walls in an explosive release of agony. But I held fast, standing resolute, pouring my will into that blinding light. Around me, I felt the rush of souls that had been trapped, pouring into the energy like streams of water, stretching and merging as the room expanded and the shadows dissolved. "Feel our light," their voices rang out, a harmonious echo pushing against the retracting darkness, the energies entwining into a magnificent whirlwind around us. In that moment, the darkness collapsed, twisted screams fading into whispers as it was swept away, a cacophony of despair replaced by the warm embrace of radiant light. I felt a shudder ripple through the house, as if it were collapsing in on itself, unraveling the centuries of sorrow that had clung to it. As the last tendrils of darkness faded, the chilling air lifted, replaced by a softness that felt almost sacred. I lowered the shard, trembling in the aftermath, the echoes of long-lost souls vibrating with gratitude. I looked around the now familiar attic, now filled with an ethereal glow that illuminated each wooden beam and shadowy crevice. The weight that had burdened the space for so long began to lift, a sense of peace permeating the walls. But I also felt a twinge of apprehension. The remnants of darkness couldn't simply vanish. The struggle had been a hard one, but I understood that while I had cast out a piece, the remnants of darkness lingered, lurking, just out of sight. I felt it in the chill that still clung to the air, weaving through long-forgotten corners of the attic. The silence was deafening, but something crackled beneath it. As I turned slowly, feeling the weight of every shadow, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a fleeting shape that darted across the edge of my vision. I froze, heart racing, my breath catching in my throat. "Who's there?" I called out, voice shaking. The air grew heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for my next move. At that moment, the light from the shard flickered, casting ominous shadows that danced like wraiths around the room. My eyes strained against the darkness. I took a step back, feeling the history of this place insistent, pressing against me, urging me to remember the pain buried deep within. From behind a stack of old crates, I heard it again, this low, guttural sound, almost like a growl, mixed with muffled sobs. The sound clawed at the edges of my mind, a cacophony of anguish that resonated with the very fabric of the house. I moved cautiously toward the sound, the floor creaking under my weight, each step amplifying the dread pooling in my stomach. As I approached, the shadows thickened and a humid, rotten smell clawed at my senses, mixing with the air like a miasma of despair. I hesitated, paralysis taking hold, but then I saw it, a sliver of light peeking through a crack in the wall. That glimmer drew me in, irresistible, as if it was a beacon of hope. I pushed aside the crates, heart pounding, ready to uncover whatever lay behind this wall of darkness. With a swift motion, I pried open a loose board and peered into the narrow space. What I saw sent chills down my spine. The light poured into what looked like a hidden room, walls lined with photographs, but the images transformed as I looked closer. They twisted and morphed, showing scenes from the past. Faces contorted in pain, eyes hollow with despair, their mouths open in silent screams. "Help us!" The whispers returned, stronger this time, swirling around my mind like a tempest. I stumbled back, the weight of their sorrow suffocating as I saw the faint outlines of those who had endured this torment. Each photograph flickered like a dying flame, their pain alive in the air. "Please," I cried out, desperation creeping into my voice. "What do you need from me?" Suddenly, the air around me crackled, and a figure emerged from the shadows. A girl, frail and ghostly, her eyes glinting with despair. She reached out toward me, a faint shimmer of light casting her features into relief. But I could also see that she was bound by the shadows, her form distorted, drifting in and out of focus. "Release us," she said, her voice echoing with an unearthly quality that sent shivers racing down my spine. "We are trapped between. We need you to finish what you started." I felt a surge of fear and confusion, knowing that I had already fought to break free their chains. But this darkness was more complex, tighter woven than I could have ever imagined. "How?" I whispered, feeling the oppressive presence of the shadows tightening around my throat, their icy fingers slipping through the cracks of my resolve. Her eyes widened, and she pointed to a dusty journal that lay in the corner of the room. A veil of dread washed over me. I hadn't noticed it earlier. I approached the book slowly, each step feeling like it pulled me into a deeper abyss. The cover was tattered, ancient, with strange symbols etched into the leather. A shiver of warning passed through me as I reached down to pick it up. The moment my fingers brushed against the surface, the shadows shrieked, swirling violently around the room, their anguished cries muffled beneath layers of darkness. "No, do not read it," they wailed, their voices rising in a chaotic symphony of terror. Ignoring their screams, I flipped the journal open. The pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with frantic handwriting that made my skin crawl. It recounted tales of torment, of sacrifices made to keep the darkness at bay, and of bonds formed in blood and despair. I could feel the oppressive weight of their emotions pouring from the words, flooding the air around me with vivid despair. And then I saw it, an incantation, a promise that was meant to bind the darkness but had instead given it power. I realized that I held a key, a potential to reverse the very curse that had ensnared the souls trapped within the walls of this house. But it also felt like a trap, luring me deeper into the clutches of the darkness, tempting me to complete what had been left undone. Yet each word I read came alive, thrumming with energy, echoing in my mind, urging me to unleash it, to confront what lay below the surface. The shadows hissed and curled, but their voices became muffled, overshadowed by the urgency coursing through my veins. "Trust me," I heard the girl say, her form flickering behind me like a candle in the wind. "You must trust yourself." With trembling hands, I read the words aloud, feeling the incantation resonate through me. Light erupted from the journal, flooding the room with a brilliant glow that pushed back the encroaching shadows. The figures in the photographs twisted and writhed, their pain mingling with my own, a cacophony of emotion that surged like a tidal wave. The walls around me began to tremble, vibrating in response to the incantation as echoes of long-buried secrets burst forth with a deafening roar. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows twisted violently, thrashing against the widening breach I had created. "Release the bonds!" I screamed, voice strong and unwavering, pouring every ounce of willpower into the incantation. Flashes of memory surged around me, the joy and laughter of lives once lived igniting the air with warmth. Suddenly, a blinding light exploded from the journal, enveloping the room in a radiant glow. I felt the darkness recoil, writhing and snapping like a cornered beast, furious and desperate. Shadows clawed at the edges of the room, a whirlwind of fury as they fought against the light, struggling to maintain their grasp on the lingering anguish secondhand. And just when I thought victory was within my reach, a deep rumble cascaded through the floor beneath me. My heart stopped as the house itself protested. Walls cracked, and dust rained down, choking the air. I could barely stand against the violent shifts of energy as the shadows erupted in a final fury, screaming words of hate and desperation, clawing at my consciousness. "You cannot escape this truth," they howled, voices mixing into a symphony of chaos. In a moment of blind panic, I gripped the journal tighter, focusing on the incantation, channeling every lost soul's grief, rage, and hope toward the shadows surging around me. I took a deep breath, reminding myself why I fought, feeling their pain mingling with my own, transforming into fuel. With that final push, I threw my head back and shouted the last syllable of the incantation, allowing the raw energy to explode from the journal in a surge that lit up the entire space like a star being born. The force knocked me back as the shadows screamed their final protest, the room erupting into a furious whirlwind of light and dark, the very foundation of the house shaking like a living thing ready to burst. And then all at once, the darkness shattered, fragments scattering like ashes in the wind. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a serene silence that washed over me like a soothing balm. I reached out as shapes began to form in the dissipating. Shadows, glimmers of light that pulsed with life. One by one, the spirits emerged, their faces transformed from anguish to gratitude, their forms unraveling from the confines of the house. "I am free," the girl shouted, a radiant smile lighting up her ethereal face as she floated past me, joined by others, their laughter ringing like chimes in the breeze. With each soul released, a weight lifted from my heart. The oppressive shadows continued to dissipate, replaced by a sense of calm that flooded the attic. But just as I felt the final tethers of darkness snap, a chilling whisper floated through the air like a chilling promise, echoing through the remnants of what once was. "This is not the end. I will return." The hairs on my neck stood on end as I turned around, heart racing. The house felt alive, humming with the energy of those freed, but shadows lingered at the corners, waiting, watching. Not now, I whispered to myself, body trembling as a cold sweat broke on my brow. I am done with this, but there was no turning back. I realized the grip of the darkness had loosened, but a new sense of dread crept forward, echoing the girl's parting words. I stepped back, searching for a way out, a path that would take me far away from this now familiar nightmare. The journal slipped from my fingers, landing with a soft thud. I didn't dare look back at the shadows still lurking, but I felt them swirling around me like a storm, whispering promises of what was yet to come. I need to escape, I mumbled, adrenaline rushing. As I stumbled to the corner of the attic, I heard the faintest sound, a soft scratching, like nails against wood, clawing their way back to existence. I glanced over my shoulder, while rising in my throat as I saw shadows crawl toward me, like serpents ready to strike. With a fierce determination, I tore my gaze away and bolted down the stairs, the pulsing darkness at my heels. Each step echoed in the silence, every footfall resonating with the urgency to break free. The walls shuddered as if the house itself was in pain, reacting to my flight. As I reached the last step, I opened the doorway to the outside world, feeling a rush of cold air flood in. But as I glanced back, the shadow forms twisted together like dark smoke, gathering their energy to leap forward into the light. "No!" I shouted, resisting the urge to linger. I dashed out, the night embracing me as I burst into the open air. But as I turned, I felt something cold wrap around my ankle, a single tendril of shadow that pulled me back, dragging me toward the threshold of the house I had fought so hard to escape. Adrenaline surged through me as I yanked my leg free, stumbling back, my heart racing like a wild drum. "You will not have me," I screamed, forcing every ounce of strength into my voice, desperate to sever the connection that threatened to pull me back into the depths of despair. The shadows writhed, roaring in fury as I broke free, catching my breath just outside the door. But their whispers echoed in the distance, lingering on the breeze like a haunting reminder that the battle was far from over. I turned toward the woods, the trees looming like sentinels against the night sky, their branches stretching out like skeletal fingers. I will not succumb, I promised myself, fighting through the tremors coursing through my body. With shaky legs and a heart full of defiance, I stepped into the darkness of the forest, ready to confront whatever awaited me. The world beyond the house seemed alive with whispers, shadows dancing just beyond my sight. But I knew one thing for certain. This was a journey that had only just begun. As I stepped into the darkness of the forest, a shiver ran down my spine. The trees loomed above me, their gnarled branches stretching out like fingers ready to ensnare me. The moonlight barely pierced the thick canopy, leaving me in a shroud of shadow. Every crunch of twigs underfoot sounded like an echo, hollow and foreboding. I could feel the air thicken around me, wrapping me in a sense of dread that clawed at my heart. I paused to catch my breath, the adrenaline still pumping through my veins, but the forest was alive with unsettling sounds. In the distance, I heard a soft rustle, as if something was moving just beyond my sight. My pulse quickened as I turned my head, scanning the trees, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes watching me. But there was nothing. I took another step, pushing deeper into the darkness. The smell of damp earth mixed with the faintest hint of decay filled the air. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the unease creeping through me. Shadows twisted unnaturally, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were stretching toward me, eager to reclaim what I had escaped. Suddenly, a faint whisper floated through the trees, barely audible but unmistakable. "Come back," it beckoned, a voice dripping with despair. I froze, heart pounding in my chest, trying to pinpoint where it had come from. The words seemed to wrap around me like a chilling embrace, laden with an allure that tugged at my mind. "Come back. The truth lies with us." I resisted the urge to reply, the voice slithering deeper into my thoughts. My instinct screamed at me to run, but the sound was so hauntingly familiar, igniting memories I had long buried. I shook my head, forcing my legs to move forward, desperate to escape the clutches of whatever twisted spirit lingered here. As I continued through the forest, the whispering grew louder, more insistent. It followed me like a shadow, weaving through my thoughts, clouding my judgment. "We know what you're afraid of," it taunted, and I felt an icy dread seep into my bones. I quickened my pace, dodging roots that threatened to trip me and branches that scratched at my skin. My mind raced with all that had transpired: the house, the shadows, the lost souls. I needed to escape, but each step felt heavier, the darkness thickening around me. The deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to change. The air grew colder, heavy with an unseen presence that pressed against me, squeezing my chest. I glanced back, half expecting to see the shadowy tendrils creeping behind me. But instead, I was met with the empty silence of the trees, their twisted forms standing sentinel. Then the ground beneath me shifted. I stumbled, catching myself on a low branch. As I lifted my head, the ground cracked open, a dark chasm yawning wide before me. I could feel the cold, damp air wafting up from the abyss, along with the faintest hint of whispers. "Join us," it floated up, echoing enticingly, weaving through the still night. My heart raced as I peered into the dark void, feeling a pull, as if something deep within was coaxing me to look closer. I could barely breathe but had no choice. I was drawn to it, an invisible thread tugging me toward the edge. A flickering light began to dance within the chasm, illuminating faces twisted in anguish. The scene was ethereal, like a nightmare caught in a dream. Each face flickered like a candle, flickering through varying emotions of pain and sorrow. They reached out, their hands grasping at the edges of reality, silently begging for release. "Help us," they chanted in unison. The desperation in their voices mingled with the alluring whisper of the forest. Every fiber of my being screamed to turn away, but my legs felt heavy, caught in the enchanted grasp of those eyes staring from within the darkness. I took a careful step closer, driven by an insatiable curiosity that pulled at me, an urge to understand their plight. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, though the words felt weak against the chaos swirling around. "Complete the cycle," they replied, a haunting chorus that reverberated in the air, winding around me like smoke. "Only then will we be free." In that instant, I understood. I was standing at the precipice of a choice, one that could doom me or grant me an unshakable connection to the spirits trapped within. I hesitated, the consequences of my actions crashing down on me like a tidal wave. And then it came, the realization that these souls needed to be freed from their own torment. A rush of resolve surged through me, bolstered by the weight of their collective pain. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage. "All right," I whispered fiercely, staring into the haunting abyss. "I will do it." In that moment, the air shifted, the shadows around me thickening once more, wrapping around my ankles, pulling me toward the chasm. I could feel the breath of forgotten souls against my skin, urging me to unite with them. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently, the voices rising in a frantic crescendo. "Help us," they cried, echoing through the trees, thrumming in my chest. Complete what was started. Before I could react, the darkness surged upward, wrapping around me like icy tendrils. I gasped, the shock of the cold seeping into my bones, dragging me closer to the edge. It was transformative, a cold grip spiraling around my heart, squeezing until I felt breathless. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the sensation, and let the energy of the voices envelop me completely. "We will guide you," they promised, their voices swirling faster, like a tornado of memory and sorrow. And with that, I felt a jolt. Images flooded my mind, faces flickering like candles in a storm, shadows wrapping around the edges of my vision, pulling me deeper into their realm. The darkness was alive, pulsating with emotion, dragging me into the abyss. I was lost, floating in a sea of anguish, drowning in their pain as the world above faded away. Each soul reached for me with ghostly fingers, merging their fear and suffering with my own. Remember, a voice cut through the haze, clear and resonant. Remember why you fight. I clung to that thought, rallying against the overwhelming pull of despair. I would not let it consume me. I focused on the warmth of light, the joy of living, fighting through the grasping tendrils that threatened to pull me fully into the darkness. Together, we will find peace, I shouted into the turmoil, pushing back against the chilling hold. I will help you. The shadows hissed, the temperature dropping more as the voices shifted, their tone oscillating between desperation and fury. Yet I pressed on, emboldened by the light of resolve flickering in my heart. I had come too far to turn back. With each ounce of strength I could muster, I reached out, pulling the ethereal energy from the void toward me. I felt their anguish start to shift, transforming from hollow echoes of despair into a collective surge of hope. The air shimmered around me, the darkness shifting and twisting, bombarding me with visions of their past lives. And then, in a moment of clarity, I understood their pain. Each soul bound not just by the darkness, but by the memories of what they had lost. The chasm roared, clenching tightly around me, but I stood firm, one foot planted in the light and the other in the swirling abyss. I still felt the cold fingers of despair snake around my arm, but I wouldn't let it break me. "Listen to me," I cried, breaking through the veil of shadows. "You are not alone. I will help you break these chains." The voices stilled, a hush falling over the tumultuous darkness. I could sense their hesitation, an awareness stirring in the once fading energy. Slowly, the shadows around me began to dissipate, broken by the desperate cries of hope that bloomed like flowers through the cracks of pain. "Free us," they whispered, and I could feel the yearning, the deep-seated desire for liberation trembling through the air. With every ounce of my will, I willed light into the darkness, channeling the energy swirling around me, memories of laughter, warmth, and connection igniting in a brilliant glow. I envisioned them unbound, united by their collective desire for peace, finally free to feel the joy they once held dear. The darkness surged with anger, thrashing against the light, and the whispers crescendoed, a whirlwind of confusion threatening to pull me down. "No, you cannot do this," it roared, battling against the warmth rising through me. I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing on the light, feeling it pulse through my fingertips, surging through the void in a sudden explosion of brilliance. I heard the shadows screech, their forms flickering and writhing as they collided with the light I summoned. "Together," I shouted, drawing every lost spirit into one united force, breaking through the final barriers of sorrow that held them captive. The ground trembled and the shadows shattered, dissolving into wisps of smoke that were blown away like dust in the wind. A moment of silence claimed the forest, and I found myself standing on the cusp of the jagged chasm, trembling as the sun began to rise, its golden light spilling over the horizon. One by one, I could see them behind me, the faces of those I had fought for, their expressions now radiant, free from the chains of despair. They smiled at me, a warmth echoing through the clearing as emotions unspooled into the air, heartbreaking yet beautiful. And then, before I could savor my victory, a shadow flitted through the treetops, dark and heavy, like an ominous storm cloud. My heart sank as I realized that this battle was far from over. Just beyond the brightening horizon, something monstrous lurked, its power palpable even in the light of dawn. I stood frozen, bracing myself for the challenges that lay ahead, knowing in my gut that this darkness was more than just a lingering shadow. It was a part of something greater, something more sinister than I could ever comprehend. Together, I whispered to the souls now free to wander, my heart hardening with determination. The shadows outside this haven weren't done with me, and I would need every ounce of strength I had to face what was coming. Steeling myself, I took a step forward into the unknown, knowing that the darkness might be waiting, but so was my newfound courage. As I ventured further into the forest, a deep sense of foreboding hung in the air, swirling with unseen threats, lurking just beyond the sunlight's reach. The path ahead twisted and turned, each step echoing with the promise of danger. The creatures in the woods seemed to be watching, and I could feel their eyes boring into me, tracking my every move. With each rustle of leaves, I half expected to see a figure emerge from the shadows, but I pressed on, knowing I had to face whatever was ahead. And as the last remnants of night faded, I felt the weight of the darkness looming closer, ready to make its move. I took a deep breath, the air thick with an unseen tension, and prepared myself for the coming storm. This wasn't just my fight anymore. I felt the memories of the lost souls washing through me, their whispers guiding me deeper into the heart of dread. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest, and I knew I was not alone. So I stepped forward, into the very heart of darkness, ready to confront whatever awaited me. And in that moment, I vowed to bring light where it was desperately needed, to face the unimaginable shadow that crept ever closer, gathering strength from the fear that gripped the forest. As I stepped, head into the heart of the forest, the sensation of being watched intensified, sending chills racing down my spine. Shadows flickered just beyond my periphery, but whenever I turned to look, there was nothing, just the dense underbrush and the ancient trees standing sentinel, their branches swaying slightly as if whispering secrets. My breath came in quick bursts, and I felt the air grow heavier, laden with an unseen dread that wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. Each step felt like wading through thick, cold fog. The forest was eerily quiet, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a crow. I couldn't shake the feeling that deep within the foliage, something was lying in wait, watching my every move, drawing nearer with every heartbeat. I pressed on, fueled by determination, but plagued by doubt. What awaited me in the depths of this darkened realm? An unsettling noise erupted suddenly, a sharp crack like a twig snapping underfoot. But it wasn't from me. My heart raced as I spun around, eyes scanning the shadows, searching for the source. But nothing revealed itself. The trees stood unchanged, just as silent. I took a cautious step back, my instincts screaming that I wasn't alone. A fleeting rustle whispered through the branches, almost mocking me. It was followed by a low, guttural growl that resonated through the forest, vibrating in my bones. Fear pulsed through me, but before I could react, something darted between the trees, a flash of dark fur, too quick and too low to be seen clearly. My breath caught in my throat, caught between the instinct to flee and the need to confront whatever strange creature haunted these woods. "Show yourself," I shouted, my voice wavering but loud, echoing through the stillness. The growl returned, closer this time, and I felt the ground shift slightly beneath me. It stirred the soil, an ominous reminder that I was standing in a place where unseen horrors thrived. As the sound faded into an oppressive silence, the atmosphere thickened around me, making each breath feel heavy in my chest. I turned again to the path ahead, but the shadows seemed to deepen, weaving together like an intricate tapestry of fear. The hint of an unfamiliar scent teased my senses, a blend of damp earth and something metallic that turned my stomach. I willed myself to move, following a narrow trail that seemed to twist further into the unknown, the canopy above pressing down like a closing fist. Then came a whisper, soft yet piercing, threading through the leaves. "Help us." It slithered into my ears like a cool breeze, stirring a deep-rooted longing within. It felt familiar, echoing the voices I had freed, but now it was laced with desperation and despair. I hesitated, the path ahead growing dimmer as the shadows encroached. "Help us," it repeated, the sound wrapping around my heart, pulling me toward an unseen source. My pulse quickened as I followed the voice, driven by an unyielding sense of purpose. With every step, the air grew colder, and the branches overhead twisted, forming grotesque shapes that seemed to reach for me with clawed hands. I stumbled, my foot catching on a hidden root, and I fell, scraping my palms against the rough earth. As I stood, brushing off the dirt, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A figure, or perhaps a shadow, darting behind a nearby tree. My breath caught again, the suffocating anxiety clawing at my throat. The whispering returned, louder now. "They need you." I shook my head, trying to dispel the rising fear, but that instinct had only grown stronger, an undeniable pull leading me toward the heart of darkness. The ground quaked slightly, sending tremors through my legs, and a sudden gust of wind whipped through the trees, sending shivers through my spine. My senses heightened, I pressed forward, moving cautiously now. With every inch I covered, the whispers grew louder and more frantic, turning into a cacophony of pleading cries. "Help us!" echoed in multiple voices now, overlapping and merging into a haunting chorus that chilled me to the bone. Then I saw it, a clearing up ahead where the trees bowed and twisted, forming a sort of natural amphitheater, the moonlight spilling down in stark beams. But it wasn't peaceful. The ground was littered with remnants of broken branches and darkened soil that seemed disturbed, as if something had clawed its way out from the depths beneath. In the center, a small pit lay open, dark and moist, its edges lined with strange, glimmering stones that pulsed with an unnatural light. Drawing closer, I felt a wave of energy wash over me, something dark and insidious lurking within that pit. The cries crescendoed, reverberating off the trees, filling the air with urgency. I stepped closer, peering into the darkness, and suddenly it felt like the pit was alive, breathing, waiting for me. The stones pulsated rhythmically, casting eerie shadows that danced across my skin, drawing me into the depths. "Join us," the voices urged, more demanding now, their pleas intertwining with the atmosphere, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. I could feel the temperature drop, a chill creeping in that chilled me to the bone, pulling at my very essence, as if the shadows wanted to claim me. I stumbled back, losing my footing momentarily, almost falling into the abyss. "No!" I gasped, shaking my head violently as I turned, desperate to retreat from the overwhelming thrall. But the energy was palpable, tightening around me like ivy, and I could feel myself being pulled toward the pit. "No!" I shouted again, my voice shaking. "I won't become a part of this." And in that moment, I saw the faces again. Those same souls I had freed, now looming just above the pit, suspended between light and dark, their expressions twisted in anguish. "You must!" came their unified cry, an echo of desperation that rocked me to my core. "You are the key!" Frozen, I realized their fate rested atop this terrible choice. I stepped closer again, heart racing, feeling the energy radiate toward me, becoming a living thing that fought against the light within me. My thoughts spiraled as I battled the temptation to join them, to succumb to the darkness. Then, like a flash, I realized what they wanted, part of me that felt immense pain and sorrow. It was the darkness within that they craved. The rituals, the incantations, the darkness in my own life that had led me here. They wanted me to offer myself, to become a vessel for the shadows that had lingered. "Listen to me!" I yelled, trying to break through the suffocating energy. "I won't be your sacrifice." But the shadows twisted in anger, the wind howling around me, pounding against my chest, threatening to swallow me whole. The voices screamed, rising in pitch and urgency, turning into a chaotic symphony. "You must understand, only together can we break this cycle." Their eyes, all radiant now with a ghostly glow, stared into me, and I felt my resolve waning. I wanted to help them, to break free not just them, but myself. The darkness pulsed again, louder, vibrating against my bones, tempting me to embrace it, to let go of fear and surrender. But amid the chaos and despair, I remembered the warmth of the light, the laughter of the souls I had freed before. "I will help you," I whispered fiercely, feeling the embers of hope rekindle within me. "But I will not become your vessel." With renewed determination, I summoned the light again, fighting back against the encroaching darkness. "You will not claim me," I shouted, raising my hands toward the glowing stones in the pit. Their energy resonated with mine, and I felt a jolt surge through my body as the two forces clashed. Light and dark battled for dominance, the pit trembling beneath me, sending clumps of earth tumbling down its edges. I concentrated, willing the power of those lost souls to coalesce around me like a shield, a barrier that set me apart from the abyss. And now I understood. There was no other way. To keep the darkness at bay, I had to embrace the pain, the sorrow, and transform it into something greater, a weapon against the shadows, a beacon of what they had lost. "I will remember," I declared, eyes fixed on the swirling darkness, "and I will not allow you to win." With that, I focused all my energy on the glowing stones, willing them to respond to me, to merge with my own spirit. The darkness twisted violently around me, howling in protest, but I pressed on, determined to forge a connection of light amidst the encroaching void. I felt it surge through me, pain mixing with power, shadows intertwining with hope, an unholy transformation crafted from the lessons learned, the sacrifices made. And just as the pit began to explode with darkness, I unleashed my light, pouring everything into the stones at the pit's edge. They flared brightly, transforming the very essence of the shadows around me. Brilliant rays shot from the stones, brightening the clearing and cracking through the darkness, illuminating the lost souls with a golden glow that pulsed with life. The cries grew stronger, uniting in a final resonating chorus, and for a moment, I was enveloped in the warmth of their gratitude, their spirits intertwining with mine as the darkness raged. And as the light surged into the abyss, the shadows recoiled, howling in fury as they twisted and turned, losing their hold. And oh, the creature roared, its voice echoing through the trees as the roots of the forest trembled. The darkness writhing around me lashed out, sending gales of chilling wind that swept past, attempting to drag me back. But I stood my ground, grit and defiance blazing in my eyes. With a final surge of energy, I called upon every memory, every soul I had encountered, every ounce of light within me, and hurled it into the obsidian pit. The ground erupted with blinding light, enveloping everything in a fierce glow, dispersing the darkness like a fragile dream before dawn. The shadows twisted and screamed, ripping away from me in desperate panic. "Release us," the voices cried, anguish mingling with relief as I felt their souls pulling away from the pit, breaking free from the chains that bound them. Shadows dissolved into nothingness, the oppressive heaviness lifting as the clearing filled with radiant energy. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding, my heart racing with adrenaline, both terror and exhilaration coursing through me. But just as the last remnants of darkness disappeared, I felt a flicker of malevolence, a presence lingering like a cruel afterthought. I turned, feeling a chill crawl along my spine. Something was still waiting, just out of sight. The forest held its breath, and I braced myself, knowing I was not finished yet. The shadows might have fled for now, but a darker force lingered, and I understood that my fight was only just beginning. Unsettling silence enveloped the clearing, but that cold presence loomed larger than before, waiting just beyond the boundaries of light I had created. I could feel it creeping into my mind, wrapping around my thoughts like a vine, squeezing tighter as if fishing for a weakness to exploit. Then, it came, a shadow, darker than any night, sweeping in from the edges of the trees. It slithered along the forest floor, fluid and malevolent, a creature born of terror. For a heartbeat, I was frozen, my body caught in a vice of instinctual fear. It was as if the very air thickened, becoming a tangible entity that pressed against my lungs, forcing me into a creeping dread. The silence shattered suddenly as the shadow sprung, merging with the darkness around it, morphing into shapes of agony and rage. "Help us!" The echoing voices turned into a chorus of wails, layered with despair and rage. coming not just from the souls I had seen before, but from something much older, more sinister, embedded deep within the forest's heart. The shadows wrapped around me, their whispers hissing in tongues that sounded like a language long forgotten, each word dripping with venom. "Turn back," a voice sneered, and I recognized it. One of the lost souls, twisted now by the darkness. "You will never escape. You are too weak." I clutched my head, fighting against the overload of sound and fury that invaded my mind. Waves of darkness surged toward me like a storm, flickering with the silver glint of despair. Memories of despair rushed back, overwhelming as the despair that lingered in the forest wrapped around my heart tight, eliciting a shiver deep in my soul. Suddenly, the ground trembled once more, and a figure began to pull itself from the shadows, an entity shifting between substance and chaos. It was humanoid but distorted, its limbs twisting unnaturally, skin pulled taut over bone, features too sharp, too grotesque. "Come play," it crooned, its voice honeyed with malice as it stepped closer, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light that chilled me to the core. Panic surged within me. I staggered back, stumbling over an unseen root, barely catching myself as the creature advanced. "Play with us," it taunted, dancing forward, drawing the shadows closer around it, blending in with the thickening gloom. "We won't bite unless you want us to." The laughter that followed was chilling, echoing like shards of glass clinking together. I turned, scanning the tree line for another way out, but the darkness had twisted the very landscape, obscuring any semblance of a clear path. Every step I took seemed to bring me deeper into its clutches, as if the forest itself intended to consume me. I heard whispers spiraling around me, voices filled with despair, each begging for release. Shadows flickered like candles, and for a moment, I saw what appeared like faces twisted in eternal suffering, lost souls caught between realms, trapped in their own torment. Their mouths gaped and contorted, silently screaming for help, urging me to join them. "No!" I cried, shaking my head violently. "I won't give in." But the air grew colder, and I could feel the oppressive weight of their intertwined pain pulling at my very being. The creature before me tilted its head, watching with gluttonous glee. It knew my weakness, weaving through my thoughts, sowing doubt as it glided closer. "Why do you resist?" it whispered, words curling around me like smoke. "You could join us. Embrace the shadows. Feel the freedom of release." A deep ache settled in my chest, the temptation gnawing at my resolve. I had faced the darkness once, but here it was again, more potent, more insidious. I forced myself to focus on the light within, feeling it shimmer against the encroaching black that sought to engulf my spirit. My heart thudded painfully. The shadows pressed closer, fingers of darkness wrapping around my arms. "Leave!" I shouted, forcing the words through clenched teeth. I pushed against the shadows, summoning every ounce of strength to break free, though their pull was powerful, undeniable. But the creature only laughed, a hollow sound that chilled my blood. "You think your light is powerful? It's a flicker against this darkness. You belong to us." I dropped to my knees, heart racing, overwhelmed by despair. "No!" I screamed, feeling the shadows suffocating me, a chilling realization hitting me like a thunderclap. I remembered the warmth of the light and the laughter of the souls I had encountered before. They had not remained lost. They had sought connection, love, and strength. I had to channel that light to fight back. A primal roar echoed through the clearing, and I felt the very forest ripple as if choosing sides. The shadows recoiled slightly, sensing my determination. I started to focus, deep within the crevices of my heart, calling upon every ounce of the light I had left. The creature hesitated, taking a step back, faltering as I summoned the memories of kindness and warmth. Every soft touch, every heartfelt laugh, and every moment shared. I felt them flowing into me, surrounding me like a protective shield, growing brighter, pushing back the shadows. Together, I bellowed into the turbulent darkness, recalling every soul's plea, every fragment of joy. I reached deep into the pit of my soul, each positive thought igniting like fire kindling the light, blindingly bright. An explosion of luminescence erupted from me, illuminating the deep shadows, and for a moment, the clearing was ablaze with light. The creature screeched, its form flickering uncertainly, morphing between chaos and clarity, flinging itself back into the safety of the shadows. "No, you cannot," it shrieked, scrambling to escape the radiance I unleashed. "Help me." The echoes of the lost surged as they began to coalesce around that light, their forms shimmering into existence, flickering with hope and resolution. Together, we surged against the dark entity as the shadows writhed, twisting in fury and panic. I understood now. Each soul liberated had lent me strength, channeling their energy through me, fed by the light of those who had come before. "We are not alone," I roared, feeling their presence mix with mine, a tide of warmth surging forth, washing over the dark. The shadows dulled as beams of radiant energy shot forth, each pulse crumbling the cold grasp of despair, forcing the grotesque creature back. It screamed, its voice cutting through the night, raw and anguished. Every step I took forward sent fissures through the darkness, revealing blinding pathways of light that twisted like roots spreading through soil, reclaiming what was lost. But just as victory seemed at hand, the ground quaked violently, a desperate thrumming beneath me that reverberated up through the trees. The forest trembled, and the ground cracked, pulling apart under a roiling surge of anger that brewed in the depths. The creature writhed in its final throes, a dark silhouette against the light, roaring in rage as it clawed at the remnants of its power. "Foolish child," it thundered, its voice echoing with ancient rage. "You cannot erase the darkness. It will always return, stronger than before." And in that instant, I felt the eerie truth seep in, creeping through my determination. The shadows would always come back, always lurking in corners of despair, ready to seize the weak. But the light, it was a beacon, and somewhere in that moment, I realized that as long as I stood, the darkness could never claim me again. Misty shadows pooled again, swirling, and I braced myself against the onslaught, digging deeper into the shared power of the liberated souls. Together, I repeated, stronger now, as the radiance soared through me, brightening even the deepest dark. One last surge of energy broke free as the resonance of laughter echoed, voices filled with strength and vibrancy. I let go, unleashing all that I had become: love, remembrance, strength pushing back the claws of anguish that sought to reclaim me. The darkness splintered, breaking like glass, exposing underlying beauty where shadows had once reigned. I felt a final pulse, an echoing clarity within the chaos, illuminating even the darkest corners of the forest as I stood amidst the reality of light and darkness, each one more defined than before, yet both a part of me in an endless balance. As the shadows retreated, I felt the chilling wind fade into a softer breeze. I looked around, my surroundings shifting into a verdant clearing radiating with life, the trees shifting in color as if to greet the dawn of a new day. Yet I knew I wasn't finished, not yet. An urgency stirred in my heart. Even in light, something still lurked at the edges, ready to reclaim its grip if I let my guard down. I had to move. I could feel it deep inside. I took one last glance at the pit, now lifeless and barren, the remnants of darkness swirling into nothingness. But just outside my view, there was a shift. Something, or perhaps someone, watching from the thick foliage. I could feel the weight of existence poised just beyond the edge, holding the breath of power unspent, waiting for me to make a choice. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I gathered my resolve and stepped forward, heart pounding in anticipation of what was to come, knowing that in this fight, I had only just begun. The forest stretched eternally ahead, a labyrinth of paths wrapped in secrets, and I felt myself pulled into its embrace, blending with the shadows and light, ready to uncover the truth that lay hidden in the heart of its darkness. I stepped cautiously into the forest, heart racing, senses heightened. The air hung thick with tension, the atmosphere charged with an unsettling energy that seemed to whisper warnings in the rustling leaves. I could hear the heartbeat of the woods, a steady thrum, a rhythm that synced with my own mounting apprehension. Darkness clung to every tree. Every shadow stretched unnaturally, as if reaching out in desperation. The moon above peeked through a canopy of gnarled branches, but failed to illuminate the depths of the shadows that twisted and writhed beneath the foliage. I felt eyes upon me, unseen but palpably present in the thick silence. The shadows seemed to pulse, almost alive, hungry for something they could swallow whole. Moving deeper into the thicket, I caught sight of a flicker in the darkness, just beyond the reach of light. It was there, and then it was gone, quickly swallowed by the night. My breath caught in my throat, mind racing with the possibilities of what lurked just out of sight. I strained to listen, hoping to hear something familiar, anything other than the wild cacophony of strange noises, the scuttling of unseen creatures, the mournful rustle of branches, whispers that could have been echoes of lost souls or my own trembling thoughts. "Keep going," I murmured to myself, though the words felt foreign and hollow in the air. The path before me wound unpredictably, twisting and turning on itself like a snake in its death throes. And with each step, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, becoming less solid, less trustworthy. It felt as if the earth itself was alive, reacting to my presence, debating if I was friend or foe. Then I saw it, a clearing ahead, bathed in pale moonlight, but it was not inviting. Unearthly shadows danced along the ground, flickering like candle flames, teasing my sight as if they were mocking me, daring me to step into their embrace. As I entered the clearing, a shiver ran down my spine. In the center stood a stone altar, ancient and worn, covered in strange markings that seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as the shadows around me. Moss grew thick around it, and the air smelled of damp earth mixed with something sweet yet decayed. The moment I glanced at the altar, a wave of nausea hit me, a sensation as if centuries of sorrow and despair washed over me. A low growl rumbled from the trees, an ominous sound that made my skin prickle. I turned slowly, searching for the source of the noise. Slivers of shadow pooled at the base of each tree, converging, taking shape, a creature emerging, shifting between forms. It was monstrous, with long, spindly limbs that seemed to stretch forever, each movement fluid and sinister. Its eyes glowed in eerie gold, reflecting the light with predatory precision, watching me intently, hungry for my fear. Familiarity struck me then. This was not the first time I had faced such a terror. With my heart pounding, I remembered the entities I had encountered before, their forms drawn from nightmares. But this creature felt different. It emanated pure malice, an ancient essence that resonated with the depths of the forest. It knew me, my fears, and my weaknesses. "Why do you linger in this realm?" it hissed, the voice slithering around me like smoke. It seemed to press itself into my mind, wrapping around my thoughts, pulling at my memories. "Do you think you can find peace amongst the shadows? Leave me alone!" I shouted, but my voice quivered, fear bubbling just beneath the surface. It was too late. I was now trapped in its gaze, and I could feel the pull of the abyss, that same darkness that had nearly consumed me before, rearing its head. The creature edged closer, skeletal fingers stretching toward me. "You came here to be free, didn't you?" it whispered, each word coated in treachery. "But freedom has a price." I took a frantic step back, feeling a tug deep within me, my essence trying to drift toward it. "No!" I cried out, realizing too late that I had failed to protect myself from its influence. The shadows thickened, reaching toward me like claws, and I fought against the urge to succumb to the depths of despair. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the depths of my soul. a reaction to the fear, a defense against the darkness. I welcomed it, feeling it surge forth, pushing back against the shadows that clawed at me. Moments later, the creature recoiled, its form flickering and warping, caught in the battle between light and dark. "You think that can save you?" it snarled, its voice now a growl that resonated through the clearing. I focused harder, channeling every ounce of defiance I had left. Images of laughter, warmth, and solace filled my mind. I remembered the light that had flowed so freely before, the joy that had broken the bonds of darkness. I held on to those thoughts, forcing the light to shine brighter, to drive away the chilling presence of despair. "Enough!" the creature screeched, clawing at the air with its elongated fingers. "I will not be defeated." It lashed out as shadows coalesced around it, forming a cacophony of anguished faces that briefly flickered into view, wailing for release before disappearing back into the void. Then, in a horrifying twist, the altar behind me rekindled, glowing with an ethereal light, illuminating symbols and runes that burned bright with energy. The ground trembled beneath my feet, the markings pulsing in sync with the rising crescendo of darkness and light. The shadows seemed to respond, twisting and undulating, absorbed by the energy exploding from the altar. My heart raced as I realized the altar was no simple construct. It was a portal, a bridge between worlds, and it drew power from both the light and the darkness. The air crackled around me as the entity grew more volatile, threatened by the awakening energies, its evil intent mingling with the urgency of the moment. A sense of impending doom filled the clearing as the abyss threatened to swallow me whole. "Trap you," it hissed, grasping at the darkness that spiraled back toward the altar, a desperate attempt to turn the tide again, to reclaim its power. But I refused to let that happen. I reached deep within myself, wrestling against the tug of the shadows, knowing I had to make a choice. What I was witnessing was not a separation of light and dark, but a fusion, life's most terrible duality. Together, I roared, harnessing the collective will of all those souls caught in the void, channeling their energy through me in a final, desperate push. The shadows shifted, howling as the creature shrieked, unable to withstand this outpouring of light and life unfurling before it. The altar glowed brighter, forcing me to shield my eyes with my hands as the energy surged, wrapping around the creature like chains forged from hope. It writhed in agony, its true form appearing for a fleeting moment, a being of pure darkness that began to crack and splinter under the pressure. "Release me," it bellowed, confusion mingled with hatred, rage that rippled across the clearing like a tempest. In a final act of will, I focused on the flickering light, pushing through the shadows that encased me until I felt every spirit trembling just beneath the surface, eager to be free. "We are stronger together," I cried, sending all my energy into the altar. The light exploded outward, and in an incandescent flash, the oppressive darkness shattered, echoing with a sound that reverberated through my bones. Then, silence fell, an eerie stillness that settled heavily around me. I collapsed to my knees, breathless, as I tried to comprehend the enormity of what had just transpired. The creature lay still, its form disintegrating into wisps of shadow, carried away by the gentle breeze that started to rise in the clearing. The altar dimmed, and I felt the remnants of energy settle around me like a warm embrace. But something was not right. Slowly, I raised my head, scanning the clearing, now devoid of the shadowy menace that had gripped it so tightly. The air was filled with a hesitant peace, yet there was a palpable tension, a lingering echo of what had unfolded. From the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement, something shifting among the trees, something lurking just beyond the light. I turned fully, heart pounding as a deeper darkness edged its way back into the very fabric of the forest. "Not yet," a voice whispered, soft and haunting, but it echoed through the night with a chilling promise. I felt the cold settle back around me like a shroud, tightening its hold as I realized that the battle might be over, but the war was far from finished. As I stood, the woods hummed softly, shadows flickering and fading into the distant underbrush. But that voice lingered in my mind, filling me with a sickening dread. It promised that I was not yet free, that the unsettling grip of this forest was still intertwined with my fate. With a heavy heart, I pressed onward, my resolve strengthening despite the tremors of fear that coursed through me. The darker paths lay ahead, and I had to confront whatever lay waiting in the depths of this forest, a reckoning that threatened to emerge from its darkest corners. I pressed onward, the trees closing in around me, each step echoing in the suspenseful silence. The chill of the night wrapped around me like a funeral shroud, and I felt the creeping sensation of being watched from all sides, shadows shifting just at the edge of my vision. The forest seemed more alive than before, each rustle and whisper in the branches carrying the weight of hidden secrets. As I pushed deeper, the path became jagged and uneven, the roots rising like skeletal hands from the ground, clawing at my ankles. I stumbled, catching myself just before I fell face first into the moist loam, my heart thudding violently in my chest. I could swear I heard something laughing, a sound both mocking and sinister, carried on the wind like an echo of madness. Panic clawed at me, urging me to turn back, to escape the dark tendrils that seemed to stretch toward me from every direction. When I finally regained my footing, I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. A series of crude totems, grotesquely crafted figures rising from the earth like distorted memories of a forgotten tribe. They were made from twisted branches and animal bones, their hollow eyes boring into me with a chilling intent. Each figure was unique, yet all shared one thing. They seemed to be watching, silently cataloging my every move, as if waiting for some unspoken cue to spring to life. My instinct screamed at me to flee, yet I felt an invisible pull binding me to the ground. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead as I realized the totems weren't just decorations. They were markers, wards against whatever darkness brewed in the depths of this forest. Every instinct urged me to study them, to understand their purpose, but I hesitated. The air thickened, carrying an unmistakable tension that seemed to twist around my throat, squeezing tighter with each passing second. "What do you want?" I whispered, half-heartedly attempting to provoke a response, as though taunting the darkness could somehow empower me. There was no answer, only the rustle of leaves, mingling with the distant howl of the wind. I felt a tremor beneath my feet, a low rumble that sent shivers coursing through me, an unsettling signal that something was awakening in the shadows. Then, suddenly, a figure broke away from the darkness, emerging from behind the totems. It was a woman, though her appearance was nothing short of unsettling. Her skin seemed pale and waxy, reflecting the moonlight in a way that made her look almost otherworldly, eyes wide and glassy, as if she were in a trance. Her hair was wild, tangled with brambles and leaves, and she moved with an unnatural grace, gliding rather than walking. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her voice a haunting melody that echoed in the stillness. It sent chills down my spine as I fought the urge to bolt. There was something about her presence that felt both familiar and terrifying. "You're the one who disrupted the balance. You have drawn the darkness here." Balance? I could barely get the words out, throat dry as I struggled to comprehend her meaning. I could feel the shadows creeping closer, thickening like a fog, urging her words to take root in my mind. "Everything has a price," she continued, moving closer with each word, a smile twisting her lips that did not reach her eyes. "It's time to pay yours. The forest demands a reckoning, a sacrifice." The night air crackled with her promise, and I took a step back, heart racing as an overwhelming dread unfurled within me. I remembered the souls I had encountered in this place, their voices still resonating in my mind, never truly gone. Could I become one of them? A mere pawn in whatever game the forest demanded? Before I could think, the ground shifted beneath me. I stumbled again, the earth trembling, the shadows spiraling upwards like serpents eager to strike. I turned to flee, but the totems seemed to ripple, the figures morphing and twisting as if harboring a life of their own. The forest was closing in, the light fading, and I felt the weight of despair pressing against me, pulling me deeper into the depths of fear. A sudden crack of thunder rolled across the sky, illuminating everything for a brief second. In that blinding flash, I saw the totems animate, their eyes gleaming with predatory hunger. I felt the grip of the forest tighten around me, its ancient roots entwining with my legs, holding me in place as whispers filled the air, a cacophony of lost souls lamenting their fates. "Join us," a voice urged, the same resonant echo that had pursued me since I had entered this cursed place. "Become one with the forest, accept the darkness." Desperation clawed at my insides as I fought against the encroaching tendrils. "No!" I shouted, though my voice quivered in the face of such dark resolve. Every ounce of my being screamed to break free, to reveal the light from within, but the shadows clung tighter, feeding on my fear, wrapping around me like a vice. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth within, the radiant memories I had summoned in the fight against despair. But the shadows were relentless, tearing at the edges of my consciousness, dragging me towards a fate I could not bear to imagine. I could almost hear the whispers promising relief, promising peace for the weary soul that lay trapped within, diluting my resolve. "Embrace it," the woman's voice echoed, as she stepped even closer, her form shifting, becoming an amalgamation of beauty and terror. Her face twisted into a smirk, a predator relishing its hunt. "You're meant to belong to the dark. It craves you, and it will seduce your spirit if you let it in." In that moment, I opened my eyes, rage burning bright against the encroaching void. "You won't take me," I screamed, drawing strength from the lingering light inside, gathering the threads of hope that intertwined with my very essence. I flung my hands forward, forcing the radiance outward, channeling my will into a blinding beam of defiance that surged into the darkness around me. The shadows shrieked, a discordant wail that echoed through the clearing, fleeing from my brilliant light. The totems trembled, their twisted forms crumbling as the energy coursed through the air, illuminating the once darkened forest with an ethereal glow. Yet the woman twisted into the shadows, her laughter a chilling cacophony that resonated through the night. "This isn't over," she hissed, her form merging with the abyss behind her, fading into the gloom. "You cannot escape what you are." The darkness receded, but doubt seeped into my heart. Was I truly free? Or had I only pushed the shadows back for a brief moment? I felt the hot breath of the forest against my neck, and a terrifying thought slipped into my mind. It would return. Breathing heavily, I glanced back at the totems, now crumbled ruins beneath the weight of my light. Their eyes were dark and lifeless, but beneath the dirt, I could just make out outlines, a tapestry of souls woven into the very ground, each waiting, biding time for the next unwitting spirit to wander too close. I turned, my instincts wrenching me into action. The path was still obscured, but I could no longer linger. I had to get out of this wretched forest before the darkness regrouped, before it found a way back to me. But as I stepped away, the wind shifted, a chill running along my spine that made me stop dead in my tracks. A new sound crept into the air, one I had not heard before, a song, haunting and beautiful, yet it carried an undercurrent of despair, weaving through the trees like a siren's call. "Come, come," it whispered. "Return to us." I stood frozen, my heart pounding fiercely against my ribcage. It was the song of lost souls, compelling and sweet, but swept with sorrow, echoing across the vastness of the woods like an invitation. My hands trembled slightly, and I could feel the gentle tug of something deeper, an instinct to follow, to submit to the forest once more. "No!" I yelled, shaking my head as fear coursed through me. With each note, I felt the tendrils of shadow begin to curl around my feet again, creeping up my legs, seeking purchase. This was a trap, a last attempt by the forest to reclaim me. Gritting my teeth, I forged ahead, pushing against the alluring call, painfully aware that the path would lead me deeper into darkness if I permitted it. I will not fall for it, I shouted, determination igniting in my chest. I ran, dodging low-hanging branches, feeling the weight of dread chasing me. The ground beneath me felt more unstable with each stride, rocks rolling and shifting underfoot. The forest appeared to warp and twist, branches reaching down like skeletal fingers, clawing at my clothing and flesh. A thud rang out behind me, the voice still luring, and I stumbled, nearly losing my footing. But I pressed on, heart racing, driven by the hope of dawn breaking in the distance, a promise of safety beyond this nightmare. My breath came in ragged gasps as I pushed through the labyrinth, darkness threatening to pull me under at any moment. Suddenly, the song faded, replaced by something far more sinister. The rustling of leaves grew louder, footsteps following closely behind. Shadows gathered along the path, coiling like serpents, each sound growing closer, revealing a force that sought to take me back, to envelop me into the depths of despair again. "Do not resist," an echoing voice roared from behind me, deep and resonant, the creature's tone woven with a hunger that sent shivers down my spine. "You cannot run. You are ours." I pushed harder, legs burning as adrenaline coursed through me. Every beat of my heart pulsed with dread, a frantic rhythm that matched the dark whispers swirling around. I could feel the heat rising against my back, a rush of darkness closing in, and fear surged, forcing me to dig deeper. With one final surge of energy, I broke through the trees, tumbling into an open space. My breath left me in a rush, heart pounding in my ears as I tried to reorient myself. But what lay ahead made my blood freeze. In front of me was a vast expanse, a wide chasm swirling with black mist that dropped into an infinite void. The ground was cracked and uneven, and I could hear distant cries echoing, the remnants of souls caught forever in the darkness, their despair clawing at my sanity. The creatures of the forest loomed behind me, shadows creeping onto the edges of my vision, and I knew they would not allow me to cross this threshold to freedom without a fight. With nowhere left to run, I stood at the edge, taking a deep breath, staring into the abyss that seemed to pulsate with an unearthly hunger. I could feel the shadows at my back, curling closer, whispering promises of power and acceptance, twisting my fears into beguiling offers I could not resist. But deep within, I grasped that flicker of light, stubborn and bright, urging me to stand firm. "I will not lose myself," I shouted into the darkness, defiance ringing through the night as I felt the shadows begin to retreat. Yet the mist before me bubbled and heaved, rising into grotesque forms, monstrous figures that twisted inhumanly, arrayed in mismatched limbs and faces devoid of sanity. They were a twisted reflection of the fears I had faced, each bearing the weight of twisted souls, lost hopes and dark desires that beckoned to me. "This is where it ends," a shadowed voice growled from the masses behind me, coiling around my resolve like a serpent, and I could feel my heart racing in terror as darkness surged forward. I knew now what this place was, a purgatory, a crossroads shrouded in both temptation and terror. They craved my surrender, eagerly clawing for my weakness, seeking to rip apart the very essence of who I was. But as I clutched the light within me, I felt it pulse against their darkness, surging with fervor. The mist shimmered, and I sensed an opening in the swirling tide, a moment, a glimmer of hope in this relentless nightmare. "I choose to fight," I yelled into the abyss, heart hammering as I stepped toward the chasm, feeling the energy network surge within, reverberating through me like an electric current. I had to take a stand against the darkness, to harness every ounce of light I had left. With one final breath, summoning every memory of love and joy, I concentrated, picturing the brightest moments that had shaped me, moments that had once felt lost in chaos. I channeled them all into a single burst of light, launching it into the void, letting it sweep away the shadows, setting everything aflame in its wake. The moment it struck, An explosion of energy reverberated through the air, illuminating the darkness, and the chasm roared with fury, trembling beneath the weight of the impact. Waves of force rippled through the air, the shadows recoiling as if burned by the light. The figures that had once towered behind me shrieked, their cries merging into a cacophony of anguish, and I could feel the weight of their rage pressing down like a thick fog. Everything felt alive, the forest pulsating with a menacing energy that surged and twisted, responding to my defiance as if I had struck at its very core. I took a step forward, determination tightening around my heart like a vice. Each breath became a mantra, chanting purpose into existence, reminding me of the strength I possessed, the light warring against the encroaching darkness. Beneath me, the ground shook violently, the chasm yawning wider, an exquisite maw ready to devour all that had dared to resist. I caught glimpses of faint shapes swirling in the depths below, indistinct figures with empty eyes, mouths full of silent screams, reaching for me, begging for my surrender. My instincts screamed in protest, but I clenched my fists, refusing to be a part of their misery. With every ounce of willpower gathering at my core, I inhaled deeply and shouted toward the abyss. "You can't have me." The words reverberated into the void, met with an unsettling whisper that wound through the air, slick with seduction. "Join us, and you will find peace," they hissed, echoing with the promise of acceptance. But beneath that melody lurked a sinister edge, a hunger for control that clawed at my resolve. But I wouldn't let them take me. I felt the light shifting inside me, pushing back, urging me not to falter. It surged through my body, warming the chill of fear, weaving through the dread that wrapped around my throat like barbed wire. I pressed my palms together, letting the energy coalesce into a radiant shield, a barrier against their influence. Suddenly, the shadows surged towards me, forming into grotesque figures, twisted faces with hollow eyes and mouths stretched into unnatural grins, a living tapestry of fear and despair. Each step they took echoed in my mind like a cacophony of lost hopes, desperate for release. The very air thickened with their malevolent presence, and I could almost feel their breath on the back of my neck, claws brushing against my skin, sending shivers racing down my spine. Terrifying shapes loomed, grotesque and warped, each one a projection of my fears manifesting. I could see flitting images of my past, moments of weakness and regret, digging into my vulnerabilities, seeking to exploit every crack in my resolve. I could feel the gravity of their pull, dragging me back toward the edge of the chasm as if 1,000 hands were attempting to tug me into the depths. Drawing from the memories of those I loved, I envisioned their faces, their laughter shattering the oppressive atmosphere. I could picture their warmth, the light of hope shining through the memories of brighter times. It became my anchor, a tether pulling me away from the dark grasp of despair. Yet the figures didn't relent. They lunged forward, howling with rage, shrieks of wrath that sent tremors through the ground. The sound was deafening, raw, and primal, seeping deep into my bones, reminding me of the price of my defiance. It twisted within me, threatening to unravel everything as they closed in, seeking to suffocate the last flickers of light. "Stay away!" I screamed, forcing my will against the tide of shadows. The words spilled from my lips as if laced with the energy I had conjured, each syllable resonating and vibrating in the air like a spell. My pulse quickened, fueled by the fire that blazed inside, pushing me forward even as the darkness threatened to engulf me. Just then, the ground split open, the chasm widening as if something ancient was waking from its slumber. Shadows poured into the void, swirling like a vortex, seeking to pull me down into eternal darkness. I felt the earth tremble beneath my feet, the very essence of the forest writhing in response to my defiance. Above the cacophony of rage and despair, I caught another sound, a distant tolling, like a bell resonating somewhere far beneath the earth, echoing through the forest. It carried a promise, a a command that surged through the chaos, calling to me like a lighthouse amidst the storm. Without thinking, I closed my eyes and focused on that sound, summoning all the light and power swirling inside me, gathering it like a tempest. I began to chant, letting the words rise from deep within, a refrain of hope that began to intertwine with the bell's toll, an incantation to banish the darkness that clung desperately to my soul. Light, light, banish this night. The words fell from my lips like an incantation, stronger with each repetition. Shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned, their forms flickering as if the darkness itself couldn't comprehend the light. I could feel the heat of their rage rising, their howls merging into a twisted harmony, a chorus of anguish battling against my chant. But the flicker of hope grew brighter, radiating from within and pushing against my fear. The forest howled, as if it were alive with resentment. The very trees bent away from the light, their roots writhing in agony. I opened my eyes to see twisted faces contorting in fury, the shadows unable to bear the overwhelming force of my defiance. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I hurled the light forward, launching it into the chasm where it exploded in a brilliant burst, illuminating the night momentarily before swallowing all in an embrace of blinding radiance. The light pierced through the swirling mist, illuminating the monstrous forms that had been pursuing me, causing them to screech in agony, their grotesque visages distorting before my eyes. They stumbled back, shadows fleeing from the searing glow that surged toward them, threatening to render them to nothingness. Yet even as I felt the tides of power shift around me, I noticed an unsettling shift in the atmosphere. A deeper darkness lingered on the periphery, its presence throbbing like a heartbeat. It was not just the shadows. A greater evil loomed, a force unleashed by my own desperation, an ancient hunger awakened by the light itself. The shadows, once retreating, now circled back, emboldened by the presence of something far worse. They coalesced into a massive shape, a nightmare taking form, towering over me, its eyes glowing a deep crimson, piercing through the veil of fear that had enveloped me. Foolish child, the voice rumbled, deep and resonant like thunder rolling across the horizon. You think you can challenge me? As it spoke, the air thickened, pressing against me like a weight. Thousands of whispers threaded together, creating a chilling symphony of despair. The creature hungered, and I felt it in my bones, the desperation clawing at my mind, trying to seep into the cracks of my spirit. You will become one of us, whether you fight or yield, it promised, a dark caress that sent icy fingers creeping up my spine. Instinct told me to run, yet my feet remained rooted to the spot. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears as the horror loomed closer, eyes shining with a malevolent intent that sent shockwaves of terror coursing through me. I could feel the pull of the shadows, weighty and suffocating, wrapping around me in a vice. Do you not see? It whispered, the voice slithering into my thoughts, curling around my mind like a serpent. You were meant to embrace this. As the creature extended its gnarled hand, tendrils of darkness reached out, brushing against my skin, igniting a chill that seeped deep into my soul. The shadows were seductive, their whispers promising power and acceptance. I could feel their allure, sweetened by the chaos that lay before me, and for a fleeting moment, doubt flickered. But I quickly shook my head, forcing my gaze away from the nightmarish visage before me. I could not succumb to their lies. I would fight with every fiber of my being. With a surge of defiance, I drew upon the light within, focusing all my energy into a single, all-consuming burst. Get back! I screamed, unleashing a blinding wave of light that cascaded from my fingertips, illuminating the very air around me. The creature recoiled, eyes wide with shock as the light struck it, shattering the illusions that swirled around its form. It let out an unearthly shriek, and the ground shuddered beneath my feet. Trees cracked and splintered in response, the forest bending under the weight of my defiance. Yet even amid my momentum, I sensed a deeper, darker hunger behind its fury. Shadows poured from its essence like a river, weaving through the air and coiling around my feet in a desperate bid to bind me once more. The darkness behind it writhed and surged, taunting me, dancing on the edges of light. Still, I pressed forward, channeling the energy from the depths of my heart, weaving my memories of light into an impenetrable shield. I pictured the faces of those I loved, felt the warmth of their presence wrapping around me like a protective embrace. As the shadows clawed at me, my energy surged anew, repelling their touch, illuminating the darkness that sought to claim me. "Your time is over," I shouted into the night, and with every ounce of passion, I pushed forth, feeling the light illuminate every crevice of the darkness around me. The shadows screamed, retreating at the radiant force, and I could see them losing form, folding beneath the barrage of light. Yet the creature loomed ever larger, relentless in its pursuit, a wave of impenetrable dread still gathering strength behind its wrath. "Foolish light," it roared, and just as I felt the light begin to overwhelm the darkness, an overwhelming shadow erupted from its core, breaking through like a tide washing over the shore. It engulfed me in an icy wave that chilled my very soul, reaching into the deepest corners of my mind where fear lurked. Images flashed before my eyes, visions of despair mixed with shadows of hope, and for a heartbeat, I struggled, feeling the cold tendrils wrap around me, pulling me further into the infinite void. "Surrender," it demanded, its voice booming, drowning out my resolve. But as the light flickered, the memories of warmth and laughter surged, battling against the encroaching darkness. "I will not," I bellowed, determination igniting and burning like fire. With one final push, I summoned all I had left, pouring my heart and soul into the light, letting it explode forth with a brilliance greater than before. The shadows shrieked, swirling around as they were cast aside, the ground trembling beneath my feet as my energy burst free, illuminating the clearing and pushing back the creature's essence. But the creature buckled in resistance, its form twisting and shifting in the light, transforming into a monstrous visage that threatened to tear through my resolve. The heat of its desperation crackled in the air, and I felt my heart race with dread, echoing against the final stand. As the last vestiges of darkness fell away, a single powerful thought resonated within me. This was not just my fight alone. The connection to those I loved pulsed within, each heartbeat merging with the energy, a vibration pulling everything into focus. And with that clarity, I turned my gaze towards the relentless mass of shadows, stepping forward boldly, refusing to yield. "You have no hold over me. You will not take me." The shadows screamed and writhed, but I kept my focus steady, heart pounding with every breath I took. I could feel the ancient force of the forest behind me, urging me, waiting for me to unleash finally what lay coiled within. "This is my light," I shouted, feeling the warmth radiate from the core of my being, drowning the darkness that threatened every inch of me. The world around me erupted in a cataclysm, a surge of energy that pushed back against the shadows threatening to claim me. Each pulse resonated through the space like thunder, the air vibrating with the raw power of my defiance. I was no longer just a passive participant. I was the tempest, the storm that could either obliterate the darkness or be swallowed whole. The shadows howled, their cries turning to growls of anger and confusion as my radiant energy surged outward. It illuminated everything in an unearthly light, illuminating even the darkest corners of fear that had clouded my mind. I could feel them fading, shriveling like autumn leaves brushed away by the wind. And still, the malevolent creature loomed, twisting and contorting in rage. "You think you can deny me?" it bellowed, its voice dripping with malice, the shadows swirling around its form, coiling in an angry mass. "You are nothing without darkness. You cannot escape." But in that moment, I realized that I had always had the choice. The darkness had merely been a shadow of my fears, a reflection of my struggles, but it did not define me. I refused to let the darkness swallow me anymore. I saw what lay behind that monstrous figure. A lifetime of fears and regrets, an abyss that tempted me to give in, but what rose inside me instead was an unwavering resolve. I could feel the forest pulse with life around me, sharp as a blade, urging me forward. The ground beneath, once a creeping trap of despair, now surged with my energy, vibrant and alive. As I focused, the shadows began to twist and tremble, their forms morphing under the searing light. Faces emerged from the darkness, half-formed, hollow beings, their eyes wide and pleading, voices whispering my name in desperation. "Help us," they hissed. "Join us. We can give you power beyond your wildest dreams." But I recognized the trickery in their pleas. They wanted to pull me into their endless night, to make me one of them, to corrupt my soul. "No!" I screamed, feeling the strength of my light surge, fueled by my determination and the memories I clung to. The faces of my loved ones, their hopes, joys, and laughter igniting a fierce heat within me. I pushed forward, their warmth blending with mine, mixing into an inferno that reached out towards the shadows. The forest trembled, the trees bending as if bowing to the might of my spirit. The creature roared, a deep sound that echoed across the clearing, sending jagged tremors through the air. I stood my ground, allowing the energy to swell within me until I could feel every heartbeat, the rhythm of defiance pounding in my chest. The luminous force shot forth, intertwining with the darkness, creating an otherworldly display that set the night ablaze, my light fighting against their cold grasp. The shadows writhed, screeching in agony as my light reached them, unraveling their forms like threads pulled from a tapestry. The faces that had once stared at me with despair twisted in horror as the incantation of my fight washed over them, transforming their cries into shrill whispers. "No, no, don't leave us!" They retreated into the tendrils of the creature, standing defiantly at the heart of the chaos, trying desperately to shield itself from the brilliant heat. Suddenly, I felt the ground beneath me shift, pulsating with energy. The forest hummed a low, resonant tone, calling to me, wrapping its arms around my spirit, merging with my resolve. I understood fully then. I was more than just an individual standing at the precipice of a nightmare. I was a beacon, a force of light embedded within the heart of darkness, a vessel for both fear and hope. I closed my eyes and raised my hands, envisioning the light exploding from my core like a supernova, radiant and unstoppable. With that concentrated thought, the darkness seemed to fracture, tremors of despair radiating outwards as I released everything that I held inside. The ethereal glow cascaded like a waterfall, crashing against the shadows, illuminating every corner of my surroundings, pushing back the abyss that sought to consume me. But as the brilliance engulfed the creature, a final, desperate snarl erupted from it, shaking the air around me. The shadows released an echoing wail, threatening to envelop every bit of warmth I had ignited. They coiled around like serpents, twisting into grotesque forms, reaching towards my heart, seeking to snuff out my light. My breath caught. Fear threatened to creep back into my mind, mixing with the flecks of darkness, but I reinforced my resolve. "You have no power here," my voice cut through the chaos, fierce and unwavering. The creature's crimson eyes flared in rage, and with my last ounce of strength, I pushed against it, feeling the radiance pulse, making the darkness flicker and fade. With an ear-splitting crash, reality warped and exploded in a cascade of light. My surroundings blurred, the shadows howling in defeat as I fixed my gaze on the heart of the darkness, summoning all that I had: love, hope, pain, all coalescing into a singular moment of brilliance. A dazzling flare erupted from my chest, washing over everything, weaving through the shadows, creating a shockwave that fractured the very foundations of despair. In that instant, the creature began to unravel, its monstrous form breaking into scintillating shards, each piece dissolving into the air like smoke. As it swirled away, The hollow faces melted into the night, their whispers falling silent. The shadows that had once chased me withdrew, retreating into the forest, disappearing into the depths of darkness from which they emerged. I stood in a haze of shimmering light, breathless and radiating. As I caught my breath, the remnants of the darkness faded into the trees, dissolving into the very earth, as if they had never existed. I was alone now, but no longer lost. The triumph erupted from within me, a burning flame that would never dim. The forest echoed with a sudden silence, a vast stillness that let the weight of my victory settle in. I had faced my fears, battled against the deepest shadows lurking within, and emerged into the light. I could finally see the moon breaking through the canopy, its silver beams cascading down, illuminating the path ahead. The night offered a promise of healing, of freedom, and of hope. With a heart aflame, I took my first steps back into the world, leaving behind the darkness that had tried to claim me. I would never forget the horror of that fight, but I would carry its lessons with me, stronger and brighter, bringing light to the shadows that dared to rise again. As I ventured deeper into the darkened forest, I thought I had left the shadows behind, but a prickling unease crawled up my spine, telling me that something lingered beyond the trees. The moonlight shone down, casting eerie shadows that twisted and shifted like living creatures watching my every move. The air felt thick, pressing against me like a heavy blanket, making it hard to breathe, and the silence, though calming, held a sinister undertone. The kind of silence that promises something dreadful lurking just outside the reach of the light. With every step, the leaves crunched beneath my feet, but soon it became apparent that the forest wasn't as quiet as I had believed. Whispers flitted around me, indistinct, yet haunting. Their tones were familiar, but filled with malice. I strained to listen, my heart pounding, the rhythm echoing in my ears like a drumbeat of dread. "Come back," a voice called softly from the dark. It was sweet, yet filled with an undercurrent of pain. My stomach tightened as I recognized it, one that shared laughter in sunlit days. The song of innocence now twisted into a siren's wail, beckoning me to follow into the depths of the night. Suddenly, I froze, refusing to step further. "This is a trick," I thought, chanting the words in my mind like an incantation, trying to shield myself from the growing temptation to obey. The voices continued, swirlings of grief and longing, pleading with a desperation that sent chills racing down my spine. Shadows danced along the edges of my vision, flickering just enough to tease the boundaries of my fear. Desperation clawed at me, and I turned to leave, ready to break into a run, but the forest shifted. The trees swayed, their gnarled branches reaching out, twisting like fingers, forming a labyrinth that ensnared me. The path behind me vanished into a blackness so deep that it seemed to absorb all light, clenching shut as if the forest itself were alive, breathing, and judging me. Panicked, I stumbled forward, adrenaline surging as I fled deeper into the woods. No longer could I hear the voices clearly. Instead, the rustle of leaves became sinister, cackling, snickering, as if I were being watched by unseen eyes. Anxiety coursed through my veins as a shadow darted to the side, too quick to catch with my own eyes, a ripple in the darkness that made my heart race even faster. Then I caught a glimpse, just a flicker of something dark moving just beyond the trees. It wasn't human, not anymore, its form twisted and grotesque. Was it one of those lost souls trying to lure me into their darkness? A part of me wanted to scream, to run faster, but another part felt drawn to it, curious about what shattered essence lay beneath the monstrous facade. It felt wrong to be curious, and yet the more I tried to suppress it, the stronger that magnetic pull became. "Stop!" I yelled into the abyss, the sound echoing back as if even the forest itself mocked my command, and a visceral laugh, echoing and shrill, burst forth from the shadows. It didn't belong to something of this world, yet it reverberated through the trees. The laughter morphed into gasps, like 1,000 voices choking on their own bitterness, and I knew they were taunting me. urging me closer into the depths of the night. A soft sound, a dragging, shuffling noise, caught my attention, and I turned abruptly only to meet the glint of pale eyes lurking between the branches. They were wide and hollow, reflecting the moonlight, mesmerizing yet deeply unsettling. The air around me thickened, and I felt a trembling beneath my feet, as if the ground itself were warning me, urging me to flee. But then I saw them, a mass of figures emerging from the darkness, gliding toward me, their limbs elongated and unnatural, stretching far beyond human limits. The forest became a theater of horrors as their faces materialized through the mist, twisted into grimaces of pain and mockery. Faces I recognized. The friends I had once known, now lost in shadows, their forms distorted, their mouths stretched into chilling grins. "Join us," they whispered, their voices layered with eerie harmonies that felt like ice against my skin. "We're stronger together." I clutched my head, trying to shake off the whispers that flooded my mind, warping my thoughts. I couldn't allow myself to be pulled into their nightmarish embrace. "You're not real," I shouted back, my voice trembling as I stumbled backward. With each step, I felt the ground beneath me ripple, a wave of despair that threatened to drag me down into the depths of darkness. The figures surged forward, reaching out with skeletal hands, fingers clawing at the air, trying to grasp me, to pull me into the dark. I could feel the chill radiating from them, a darkness more suffocating than anything I had faced. Each step back elicited a guttural growl, a sound of frustration that only fueled the shadow's rage. "Why do you resist?" they taunted, their voices echoing through the forest, reverberating with an unsettling rhythm. "You're one of us now." Panic clawed at my throat as I turned to run once more, ignoring the voices screaming in my mind, the gut-wrenching realization that they were right. A part of me hungered to embrace the shadows, to slip quietly into their embrace, where the struggle of light faded away. But I couldn't give in. I had fought too hard. Just as the shadows lunged, a beam of soft light broke through the dense canopy of leaves, casting a shimmering path before me. It punctured the darkness, illuminating the trees on either side like guardians pushing back against the night. My heart raced with renewed strength, and I sprinted into the light, desperate to escape the clutches of despair that chased me. But the shadows didn't relent. Their haunting laughter followed me, a chorus of torment echoing through the woods, growing louder, more insistent. I dashed towards the light, feeling the warmth wrap around me like a cloak. But the figures behind me twisted and morphed with dark glee, their laughter merging into a dissonant symphony of anguish. Each step forward felt like a battle against an unyielding tide, pulling me back into the depths of darkness where despair ruled. Then, as I burst into the clearing, the moon bathed everything in a stark light. But even there, the shadows had crept in, curling around the edges of my vision, devious and eager. The figures from before reassembled, their movements unnaturally smooth, like marionettes pulled by unseen strings. "You thought you could escape?" they hissed, their voices now echoing like a chilling melody wrapped around my mind. "This is only the beginning." Suddenly, a gust of wind flared through the clearing, scattering the leaves like a bluster of whispers, distorting the landscape around me. I felt the air crackle with energy, and then, without warning, the world began to shift, the trees bending toward me, and the ground trembled violently as if the forest itself were waking from a long, dark slumber. As I steadied myself, my eyes darted to the edge of the clearing. A shadow began to materialize, coalescing into a dark mass that loomed larger than anything I had faced so far. It twisted and churned, a living darkness born from my fears, and every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet remained anchored. I could not look away as the shadow's features began to sharpen, revealing monstrous eyes glinting with malice. This creature was different. It felt ancient, primal, and utterly exhilarating in its malevolence. The very air crackled with anger as the ground beneath me shifted, pulling me toward it, luring me forward. "Your light does not belong here," It rumbled, its voice a deep growl that resonated through the trees, vibrating the very earth beneath my feet. You will join your friends soon. You will be one with the shadow. Panic surged anew, and I glanced at the encroaching figures once again. They advanced slowly, a horrific dance toward my inevitable conclusion. This was my final stand. I had to extinguish their grasp. Otherwise, the darkness would envelop me completely. Desperation flooded my mind, and a familiar urge welled up, mingling confusion with the fire raging inside me. I had to tap into the chaos. I had to seize the shadows and turn them into something more, something bursting with light, a paradox that could shatter their control. I'm not afraid of you, I shouted defiantly, channeling every ounce of resolve, every flicker of hope I could summon. My voice became a battle cry, resonating in the air, and the shadows hesitated, caught off guard, their features flickering in and out of focus. With a sudden fervor, I launched myself forward, plunging into the heart of darkness where their confidence writhed. The more I advanced, the brighter I shone. A rush of energy coursed through me, igniting a light that surged from within, blinding against the darkness, trying to engulf me. I am the light that fights the dark, I declared, my voice echoing into the hollow silence surrounding me. The very trees trembled, acknowledging my strength as I could feel the dark mass begin to recoil, confusion rippling through the air as they seemed to waver in reality. But the creature roared loudly, combating my defiance. The winds picked up around us, swirling like a storm, and I could feel its malevolence trying to clutch at my very soul. You will not fight forever, it screamed foolishly, and a deep rage seeped from its hideous form. I braced myself, digging deep within my heart, pouring every emotion into my light, crafting it into a weapon against the encroaching shadows. The battle had just begun. The energy within me surged like a tempest, a wild storm of light and emotion, shattering the suffocating grip of darkness that sought to claim me. I could feel the shadows wavering, their forms flickering like dying flames. But just as I thought I had the upper hand, the air grew thick again, a heavy, suffocating weight that clawed at my resolve. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, reflecting a darkness deeper than the night. Foolish light bearer, it howled, its voice reverberating through the clearing, shaking the ground beneath me. You truly think you can defeat the void? You are but a candle flickering in a storm. My heart raced. The shadows surged forward, a wave of black, relentless and overwhelming, crashing against the slender beam of light I had summoned. I stood firm, pushing back against the tide, but the darkness was thick and persistent. I could feel it trying to wrap around my legs, dragging me down into their despairing depths. As the tendrils of shadow wrapped around me like vines, I could sense the faces of the lost within them. My friends, their features contorted in anguish, mouths twisting in silent screams. Help us, they pleaded, their voices mingling in a haunting chorus that sliced through my heart. You have to join us. There is peace here. The temptation threatened to overwhelm me, the promise of a release from my burdens like a siren song. I felt the pull, my mind clouding as familiar warmth seeped over me. For a moment, I was tempted to let go, to give in to the comforting darkness where pain ceased to exist. But then I recalled the fuzzy moments of happiness, the laughter, the love, the warmth of sunlit days that had once filled my heart. No! I yelled, summoning my will, summoning the memories I cherished. The light within me flared intensely, mushrooming into a radiant ball of energy that blew back the encroaching shadows, illuminating the faces trapped within. The figures recoiled, their forms twisting and writhing in protest, trying to escape the illumination that sliced through their despair. You don't have to fight us, they cried, voices now tinged with desperation. We can take away the pain. Pain is part of being alive. I shouted back, my defiance stronger than ever. I won't let you take that from me. With renewed determination, I focused once more, clenching my fists as the light pulsed around me, flowing from my core like a radiant tide. driving the darkness further away. The creature before me growled, frustration bubbling in its guttural throat as it fought to reclaim its power. But I could see something in its eyes, fear. The realization ignited my courage, bolstering my spirit. Then, with a final push, I released every ounce of light that had gathered, feeling it explode from within like a sunburst, illuminating every shadowy tendril that dared to encroach upon my being. The brightness carved through the night, dissolving the shadows, forcing them to retreat, writhing in anger as if the very fabric of their being were being torn apart. Yet just as the darkness gave way, I felt a shift in the air. A chilling breeze rolled in, whipping through the clearing like an icy hand. The light I had summoned seemed to flicker, and I sensed a deeper threat emerging from the darkness. Something stronger, more sinister than the figures I had faced before. A new shadow swooped low, rising from the depths of the forest floor, thick and swirling like smoke. It took shape behind the creature, a massive, formless mass, a swirling vortex that absorbed the very light I had unleashed. My heart sank as dread coiled in my stomach. This was not just darkness. It was a predatory force that hungered for my light, a behemoth born of every fear I had ever faced. Did you really think it would be that simple? The creature's voice now echoed eerily, harmonizing with the shadow behind. You've only made me stronger. The new entity expanded, bursting forth with tendrils of darkness reaching out toward me, and I was left reeling. I stumbled backward, feeling the weight of its gaze, 1,000 unseen eyes boring into my very essence. The shadows, once merely obstacles, coalesced into a storm, undulating around me like vaporous claws, flourishing hungrily in the dim light. Join with us, the voices echoed, becoming a cacophony that surged through the air, warping reality around me. You can't escape. You will become one with the dark. Panic gripped me, but beneath it surged a deep-rooted power. My fight was not over. I was a beacon, a point of light in an encroaching void, and they could not snuff me out without a fight. I shifted my feet, determined to push back, to dive deeper into the light rather than submit to the shadows that threatened to consume me whole. The tendrils neared, a web of darkness intent on clashing with my resolve. Each one felt like a knife, slicing into my hopes, whispering of inevitable doom. I felt my heart thundering in my chest. But beneath that, an ember of hope still glowed, a small flame hidden amidst the chaos. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, reached down into my soul, and leaned into my memories. I thought of laughter shared among friends, the warmth of embraces, and the beauty of moments that filled my life with joy. Each thought supplied the energy that pulsed in my body, and with it, I felt my light amplify, breaking through the panic, shoving the darkness farther back. In a desperate bid, I raised my hands once more, shouting, "I am light, and I will not be consumed." The light erupted from me like 1,000 suns, illuminating the treetops, blinding the darkness momentarily. The shadows recoiled, writhing in pain as if I had pierced their very core. I could sense their fear, the uncertainty that coursed through them as they began to falter. But the deeper shadow did not retreat. If anything, it roared louder, the noise frightening and raw, echoing through the night. It twisted and heaved, reinventing itself, pulling the smaller shadows into its depths, feeding on their despair and anger. "You are weak. You will fall," it bellowed as it surged toward me, a malevolent mass gathering strength and fury. Summoning my last reserves, I planted my feet, determined to stand my ground. I would not allow this monster to take my light. I drew on my memories, visualizing each one, inhaling their warmth, letting them swell inside me until my hands sparked brightly, brimming with energy. And then, with a fierce shout, I thrust my arms outward, releasing everything I had into the world, the light, the hope, and every shred of love I had ever known. A beam shot forth, creating a circle of illumination so fierce it split the oppressive darkness in half, illuminating the clearing with pure, white light that rippled outward like a shockwave. The creature screeched, its form flickering in and out as the light consumed it, dissolving the shadows that had once seemed so impenetrable. "No, this can't be," it howled, and in that moment, I realized its rage was also fear. Fear of being extinguished, fear of no longer existing. "Let there be light," I cried, pulling all my strength into that singular moment as the beam pulsed brighter, swallowing the void whole. Unraveling threads of shadow wrapped around me one by one. I could feel the weight of the darkness finally lifting, losing its grip, and as the last remnants recoiled into the earth, I felt a rush of elation wash over me. Standing in the center of that bright clearing, I felt it, the purest form of victory. I had battled the darkness and emerged stronger than I had ever believed possible. Then a hush fell over the forest. Unrecognizable silence, freeing and profound, wrapped around me as the shadows dissipated completely. The trees stood sentinel, breathing softly under the bright glow of the moon, which now shone down gloriously, illuminating the scene with a peaceful serenity. I was still trembling, but now it was not with fear. It was with exhilaration. For the first time, I felt truly alive. I had not just fought the shadows. I had reclaimed my place in the world. But as I breathed in the fresh night air and prepared to take my leave of the clearing, a lingering echo of unease lingered in the back of my mind. What if the shadows weren't truly gone? Would they linger, enduring in the depths of the forest, biding their time to rise again? Would I have to confront them once more? With those thoughts swirling in my mind, I took my first steps toward the path that lay ahead, ready to face whatever came next, determined not to allow the darkness to scare me again. However, just as I turned to move forward, I heard a whisper, soft and chilling. "This is not the end." The words hung in the air, echoing in the silence, and within that heartbeat of fear, I felt a shadow shift behind me, an unsettling chill creeping close. The battle had begun anew, but this time, I was no longer just a flickering light. I was a force of resilience, ready to salvage the darkness that had yet to break.